Hey, hey guys, welcome back to the show. This is an early show once again. I'm gonna go for about an hour, maybe a little longer. Who knows? But it's gonna be fun. Thanks for your patience. I was gonna start at 2:30, but I'm such a hippie, so I had to make some tea. Got to keep warm a little bit. Um, and I had to stuff my face as well since it's lunchtime for me and I'm taking a short break. So, Phoenician Cedar, thank you so much for being here. I love I love hearing from Lebanon, from Lebanese people. It's a very special country. Um, yeah, I hope it stays the way it is forever, and chances are that it will. It's a very special place. It's a very diverse place. It's a very welcoming place. Um, it's from the perspective of the government, of course, you can't count on a lot of things that we take for granted um, in the northern hemisphere, so to speak, and that's of course a shame. But hopefully, even better days for the Lebanese people ahead. And if there's one thing, that's a hopeful people. So there's always better days ahead. I had this very funny thing. Hey, man, thank you so much. Um, Professor, I had the. How are you doing?
Hey, Lebanon, Lebanon. We love
Yeah,
Lebanon.
I love Lebanon.
We love
Um,
Lebanon. We love Lebanon, but the government, no love.
well, Professor, you don't. What's there's no government, so
No
you know
government.
you, you are not allowed to hold feelings against something that doesn't exist. Um,
Politicians, politicians. We don't
right.
love the politicians.
In
We love
general, I
the
think
Lebanese people.
that holds true
A
for
lot of,
most politicians, if not all. So
yeah.
I don't think that's specific to Lebanese politicians, but as there was a popular song um, when the protests were really at their height. Killun يعني killun, that we hate you all, basically. So there's no difference. It's not like one over the other. I think most politicians are the same breed. Um, I Instagram served me this interesting poll. Apparently, it is an advertiser sponsored poll. It's asked me the question: how would you describe? Speaking of feelings, how would you describe your feelings about Breitling? Um, Very favorable, somewhat favorable, neutral, somewhat unfavorable, very unfavorable. How would you describe your feelings about Breitling, Professor?
Somewhat unfavorable.
Somewhat. Could
Somewhat.
you could you qualify somewhat? What does that mean?
Yeah. You know, I went the other day to the shop and I looked at their I was trying to convince Yani myself that these are chunky, big watches,
Mm,
and there is nothing. They're affordable if you compare them to, Rolex. They're affordable, but they're big, chunky. I don't know. I mean,
well,
I
they have
used to like the Super Ocean.
mhm. They have kind of moved away from the oversized, chunkier designs, even though much of it still remains and persists in their lineup. That
Yeah,
new GMT watch they came up with, for example, Chronomat GMT was a pretty dressed down, subtle 40 millimeter watch. I think there are other sets of problems that I'm more concerned with. so they seem to have gotten the message. They seem to have gotten the memo about that particular image they cultivated early on in, when I was coming up, basically.
Yeah.
That's why I had, and I was coming of age in New York, so Breitling was the watch that I associated with finance people. No offense to you, professor, but like, that big shiny piece, that had nothing subtle about it. It was pretty assertive, aggressive, and not necessarily favorable. Whereas I think since Georges Kern took over, coming from IWC, coming from Richemont, there have been some positive developments. Again, much more of a calculated return to certain roots of Breitling, which rest, of course, in being one of the proponents of the chronograph wristwatch as we know it. With to be worn on the wrist with two buttons, start, stop, and reset. Breitling was at the forefront of that in the first half of the 20th century, and they have many iconic designs, of which, of course, the Navitimer is, from a distance, one of the most recognizable watches ever, right? When you look at historic photographs, like from the 60s and 70s, you can miss this or that. You can, since Rolex is more of a genre at a certain distance with a low quality photograph than a specific model, you might say, is this a Submariner? Is this a GMT Master with a black bezel? Sometimes you can't tell, but the Navitimer you can somehow always tell because of how much there is that is going on the dial, right? That can be a bad thing, but for recognizability, for iconography, that's a strong suit. So they did a lot of nice things, especially in Georges Kern's collaborations with Fred Mandelbaum, who is one of the most knowledgeable people and one of the strongest collectors when it comes to vintage chronographs, and Breitling chronographs as well. So a lot of the reissues they did were really educated and really targeted. And I would say that's very favorable. The unfavorable thing is, of course, on the one hand, you can say they are, relatively speaking, more reasonably priced. On the other hand, I would say a lot of their models that have simple ETA calibers are very much overpriced for our time, right? Because we have, in a way, we are pampered, right? Maybe the most recognizable watch brands are now, having price increases every year. The secondary market has been going through the roof for the last 2 years, even though that's changing and that's reversing and that's even crashing or bursting as a bubble. We are also spoiled in the sense that we have now a lot of micro brands that do very exciting things with simple caliber bases, whether we are talking about Sellita or Mayota or Seiko or whatever else they can get their hands on. So for that reason, Breitling ends up being overpriced when it comes to that new colorful Super Ocean Heritage line, when it comes to the Chronomat GMT, in fact, which is, again, a color GMT movement, ETA based, yet, a $5,000 watch, right? Why would you, unless you are specifically somehow committed to Breitling or love the aesthetic? So I'm actually neutral. Interestingly, if you were saying vintage Breitling, I would say very favorable. if you say, contemporary Breitling, somewhat unfavorable, perhaps sharing the opinion with you. Yeah, that's where I stand. Confused, of two minds.
Yeah, it's okay, the Navitimer, they have been producing it for many years. Aesthetically, one or two pieces are nice, but overall, you look at the Avenger, which I've seen it on many people's wrists for the last 10, 12 years. I think it's being produced, I don't know, 14. It's a big thing. It's a big chunky thing. I mean, what I remember them for traditionally, Lord, is this professional emergency watch, right? Which, uh, um, it has this radio thing, and then you can connect with a satellite, and if you are in some emergency, some frequency will find you, and so forth. Okay, if you are in the desert or in Antarctica and there is no way to communicate, you can have a watch, but I think they've never migrated to something else. There are one or two pieces interesting, but then again, it's not the wow watch. I mean, IWC kind of is in the same league but higher because of the migration away from ETA, which was never, they onboarded ETA movements and then they disembarked from that. But IWC is a very good company, in my opinion. I'm favorable to them versus Breitling. Now, for 4 or 5 thousand pounds, will I buy one or will I buy an IWC? I think I will buy an IWC anytime.
I mean, look, my historical resentment aside, I think when I compare the contemporary situation of the two brands, again, if what I like about Breitling is their recent turn towards reissuing and to a certain extent reinterpreting some of their most iconic designs, and not only the classic Navitimer reference of 806, but also, for example, the Avi pilot's watch 1953, which is reference 765. What I like about IWC is actually their more recent effort of experimenting with different materials and really trying to shed that image of just being the big pilot brand, which again was, like you said, I think you very shrewdly identified both of them, because those were the brands early in the 21st century, especially IWC after Blümlein's passing as well, started really being associated with that oversized look. And they're both trying to go to different directions now, but IWC seems to have a more clear idea of how to forge a path forward, whereas Breitling seems to be kind of confused about what it is and what it wants to become itself. Perhaps, I don't know. Maybe I'm.
If I remember correctly, Lord, a year, was it in 2020? I think it was acquired by a private equity group.
Yes, and they brought Georges Kahn as well.
Yeah.
Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, good afternoon, Lord,
Hey.
Professor. How are you?
Hi there. Hi. Where is your platinum?
My platinum went back into the bank. I actually, I now have the AP Royal Oak, which I got out of there. I was missing this one, so hope you guys are doing well today. I wanted to share my perspective on Breitling. If you have a couple of minutes.
Of course.
A lot of what I think about the brand a lot of what everybody thinks about their favorite brands or any brands is shaped by the experiences with the brand in their childhood. And I wasn't into watches, and I had no idea who Breitling or Rolex were, who they were when I was a teenager. But one thing, a vivid memory that I do have, is getting on a plane to go on vacation to Florida or to go visit, people in California or whatever, and looking through the Delta or the American in-flight magazine. And one thing that really stood out was the ads for Breitling. Even as a kid, as not even a teenager, but even sub 10 years old, remembering ads remembering ads for Breitling that positioned them as instruments for professionals. They always had an image of a Concorde or a plane or a vintage plane in the background. They were always positioned as premium. When I thumbed through the entire in-flight magazine, you would always get the impression that this Breitling was a very expensive watch, that this was probably the most expensive watch that you could buy. And they always showed something that was very blingy. Let me see if I could pull up an example. Let me see. I'll share my screen. Like here's an example of an ad that you would see in an in-flight magazine. A very flashy looking, expensive looking watch. You have the image of a plane. You get the sense that this is the watch that the pilots, that people who are professional pilots, commercial pilots, this is the watch that they wear. And I always had a very positive premium expectation of Breitling way before I even knew that I would ever buy a watch later in life. Those are my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think again, I very much actually identify with that particular heritage of Breitling. Breitling for me is not only a timepiece that is very intimately connected to the history of aviation, history of space exploration, even, right? We all know the cosmonaut. We know the Scott Carpenter watch, but it's also for me the watch that defined a certain era of Formula One too, right? Both the Team Lotus iconic drivers, Graham Hill and Jim Clark, wore Navitimer reference 806s. Both while racing and also while they were casually mowing lawns or drinking cocktails in parties and other sorts of meetings. So it's to me it's a very iconic brand. It's a very important brand that perhaps lost its way from my perspective for a little while. As much as some other people love John Travolta, that's not an ambassador for a brand that I love as much as I appreciate his sexual orientation.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I do also remember, and I don't know exactly what era, if that was the early 2000s where they had recruited John Travolta as an ambassador, but those print ads I also remember being very visible and in in-flight magazines and in print media at the time. And they also reinforced to me the image of a premium brand with that high technical capabilities and something that was designed for pilots, for commercial pilots.
And joking aside, by the way, that's one brand association or ambassadorship that is actually wholly organic, right? It's not something that they imposed on him or tried to strap on his wrist. The guy actually loves flying, and that was the watch he associated with with the whole outfit. Basically, that was part of his pilot persona, a Navitimer watch. So what better ambassador you can actually find? My BS aside. But that is the era that that made me dislike Breitling in an active fashion, whereas I always loved the history of the brand, and I do appreciate, you know, the reason we talk about IWC and Breitling in the same sentence, by the way, let's recognize it's not really a coincidence, because their history is now, their recent history is very intimately connected, because they both had Georges Kern as kind of the, not only the figurehead, but at least part of the brains of the operation very recently. So it's not a coincidence, I think, that we are talking about how they have changed tracks and taken a certain direction that perhaps appeal to the vintage watch enthusiast or the history buff a little better, a little more. I just want to welcome some people. Nick, so nice to see you, man. Hans, of course. Whole Milk. Whole Milk, I mean, yes, he points to something else. Of course, IWC's maybe not immediate history, but IWC under Günther Blümlein, that's a nice, we were just talking about this, Aussie, just a couple of days ago, where I said, like, you know, when I get in the zone, my German and English gets mixed up.
Yeah, we were.
IWC, especially in the 80s, of course, had one of the most exciting movement departments, one of the most exciting complications departments, not necessarily because they were inventing something from scratch, but they have basically, through people like Kurt Klaus and Richard Habring, whom we really respect now as an independent watchmaker, these kinds of people were working on creating modules that could be easily mass-produced, easily serviced, and really easily also, more cheaply supplied as well. So if you can believe it, when Kurt Klaus module for Valjoux 7750 came out in mid 80s, and that allowed them to produce the Da Vinci Perpetual Calendar. The Da Vinci Perpetual Calendar, after 1518 of Patek from 1941, was the first serially produced perpetual calendar, if you can believe that. So you really have to respect what IWC and what people like Kurt Klaus and others were doing in that manufacture under Blümlein's visionary leadership. So yes, I mean, Breitling finally had an in-house hand-wound chronograph movement in BO2, which is great, but it's, of course, it can't be compared, Whole Milk, like you said, to the IWC Perpetual Calendar Chrono. Perpetual Calendar Chrono, I should have said, by the way, that's the difference, right? The 1518 to IWC's Da Vinci, there's a whole 4.5 decades almost where no other brands other than Patek was serially producing perpetual calendar chronographs until IWC made it both cheap, possible, and cool to do so. So it's something significant. Tim G. Oh, nice. I have some friends who love their Israeli citizenship as well, who are Armenian Jews. Yes, that's great, Tim G. Nice to know, man. Hag Sameach to you as well. Yeah,
I like Hans's question, Lord.
this one.
Yeah.
It's a tough question, isn't it? What would you like to respond to it, Professor? Can brands ever break out of their perceived level or image?
Yeah. I want to give a straight answer, No, it's not easy. And watch companies make bets, very big bets, and some of them win and some of them lose. The ones that win are the ones that, I mean, Rolex obviously made a very big bet and they won big time because it is the same look. Whether they change the bezel, green, black, blue, red, this is gimmicky, it's Mickey Mouse. The mechanism is the same all over. And they produce a million of these watches. And I'm fascinated how marketing has taken over perceived realities and perception of realities. Now, I'm simplifying things. The same bet was made by AP, and AP won because, again, it's the same Mickey Mouse. 50 years, 70 years, limited edition, this edition, that edition, offshore, onshore, you know. They won as well. Patek, they won. And whether they like it or not, Nautilus is the one that made Patek be Patek today. Patek is the most coveted brand. Everybody wants to have it, whether we like it or not. Lange is interesting because they're outside of this mold, and I think it's a unique brand because it is the manufacturer that counts more. They came to the game of the steel watches late and they just rode that bandwagon, but it's really the manufacturer that has carried them successfully, in my opinion. Vacheron, as a result of the bubble that burst 6 months ago, they rode that one as well. Not as successful, I would say, as that one. And RM, Richard Mille, I think they won as well. I mean, it was a gimmicky brand 14 years ago, using until today AP technicals and calibers, and they're selling watches, for billionaires, and they have maintained value regardless what we say. They have won as well. Whether you like the aesthetics or not.
No, but I mean that's a little bit different because Richard Mille started from scratch, right? It's not like he had a reputation to shake off. I know maybe initially.
No. Yes. But he won as well. He won.
Of course.
I think he won successfully. Now he's in a billion francs.
I think the story from a different point of view is much more interesting in terms of the examples you have given, because Patek was kind of always known in the background as the watch of the cosmopolitan elite, as the master of complications, so to speak, even though that's a name that Frank Müller tried to grab for himself. That's Patek's reputation, right? You know, with 1415, with 1526, with 1518, something that they already put on the mark under the Stern family, patronage, so to speak, with their world time, with their perpetual calendar, chronograph, and suddenly they only reach the kind of level of mainstream desirability after the Nautilus was blinged out by the late Virgil Abloh and made into a verse in Drake and Future's collaboration. And I am going to insist on that because yes, people might say Jay-Z wearing this or that, but Jay-Z has been wearing Audemars Piguet for such a long time with special editions, offshores, and this and that didn't necessarily bring the kind of craze that the mainstream embrace that Nautilus was brought. Of course, rap has changed, and rap has become mainstream 2 decades after the offshore was embraced by Jay-Z and other hip hop artists. Anyways, but it is very difficult, right, to shake off a certain brand image, and sometimes it helps to perhaps be occulted, be under the shadows, be a little unknown and mysterious. And I think that brings me to Lange, because Lange, even when it was revived in the 90s, remained a connoisseur's brand for the longest time. And like you said, its strong point is still the fact that that it has a manufacturer that values artisanship, that values certain kinds of invention and innovation, and that has been very successful in, again, mythologizing their recent past, right? They if you look into the history, that even the most iconic oversized date is actually a module that was donated to them by Jaeger LeCoultre. That the first, yes, Glashütte is this important German watchmaking city, but the first core of Lange watchmakers had to travel to Schaffhausen to receive their training, and then went back to Glashütte to produce those 4 premier watches. So, but Lange has started somewhere, added on top of it brick by brick, and mythologized these aspects of their history in a way that's really, it's good copy. It's masterful marketing. You have to appreciate what they have accomplished. And I don't know who is to be credited with that necessarily. Should we give credit to their executives or Richemont to a certain level? I don't really know how they line up under those corporate auspices, honestly.
Mind if I jump in for a quick comment?
Of course, go ahead.
So I do think it's possible for brands to change their brand positioning over time, and it's possible for the market to change their perception of a brand. It's far more important that a brand be introduced with a very accurate and authentic brand positioning at the outset. And then that can be tweaked or modified over time. That typically has to happen when you're introducing a new brand, and you need to do something to generate awareness and interest at the outset. And you want that interest to be as broad as possible to get a base from which you can start to adjust, typically upward, the nature of the brand. So in the car world, you can think back 30 or 40 years to where Honda started out, as being small, efficient, affordable, fuel efficient vehicles, and you can see where they've taken the brand today. Something similar with Hyundai maybe 15 years ago. They started off as a value brand, and they tried over time to kind of inch it up and position it a little bit higher and higher. In the watch world, there aren't that many examples. Maybe you could think of Nomos as a brand that started out a decade ago and I think they had a vision of positioning themselves as in-house movement, premium entry-level luxury, but couldn't get there right away. So they started off in the $1,000 to $2,000 range, and you can see over time how they've been inching up and want to be something, a brand that plays more in eventually the $3,000 to $5,000 space. So that's my take on it. Yes, you can change the brand positioning, but you shouldn't have to change it if you got it right and it's authentic and accurate from the outset. But you'll see Aventi doing that, right? Aventi kind of coming in to be Aventi.
What's that? I've already forgotten what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they even still exist, but that was their approach, right? Kind of, jump onto the scene with something that has a very, very strong value proposition, and then if they're successful, which they haven't been, over time, over many, many years, build a cult following or customer base that positions them as a more mainstream brand. But it's very hard to do that in the watch space that's very traditional.
Hey, Nick, what's up?
Hey, Lord. Sorry, my connection went out for a second. How are you doing? And hi to OC and El Professor as well. I hope you all are well. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Sorry to butt in like this, but I only had a few minutes.
Happy Kwanzaa. Happy Kwanzaa too.
Happy everything. Yeah, happy Kwanzaa too. I want to be inclusive of everybody. That's for sure. Hope you all are well. Listening to your knowledge. It was good stuff, Lord, for real. Enjoying it.
Man, thank you for coming, and I do appreciate, as much as I love the authenticity of the bad connection and no microphone. I won't rage on it as Ducks reports used
I
to.
appreciate that. That story is really funny to me. It actually cracks me up because like he was totally serious. Like it's what's up. I mean, you gotta love that he's true to himself, So yeah, I like it.
Oh, no, I mean, it's some people get hung up on a number of things, so it's quite all right. But it's nice to see you, having the kind of vessel that your content deserves. So it's good to hear you clearly.
Well, that's kind of you. I appreciate that. Very kind of you, Lord. To say something about Nomos, I am a big fan of Nomos, OC. I actually have a Nomos. I have a Club Nomos. It's a club.
But would you agree with kind of the where they started off maybe a decade, 5, 6, 7 years ago, trying to establish themselves with a base of entry level?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you think they've successfly crept up to the 2, 3,
Oh, they
4,000?
totally crept up. I honestly, I didn't hear a lot of what y'all were talking about. But yeah, no, I think that they tried to insert themselves at that price point around 1,000, and now they're trying to creep up more. Like, I'm not saying they're worth more than that. When I bought mine, I think I spent about $800 out the door. So like that's like in that $1,000 price, like that's where I value it at. Like I wouldn't be comfortable spending, 2,000 or 3,000. I do like the Neomatics, and like I really like the Lambda, especially. Those are way more though. Those are like 6,000 or 7,000, and like gold and all that. But I think some of those are really nice, but not at that higher price point. Definitely not at that price point.
Time will tell. Time will tell. They may introduce models with more features or more complications or different materials, and they can start to slowly creep up to that. But I mean, to Professor's point, it's hard. It's hard to do it. It's hard.
Well, I mean, I think Nomos is an interesting example, and I do appreciate you brought them up because on the one hand, even with the relatively meager resources and absolute lack of reputation they started with, they also were really insistent on establishing a recognizable design language. They haven't invented it, of course. They were very open about calling themselves a kind of Bauhaus influenced company. But again, it's one of those watches. It's not one of a kind anymore, perhaps, because many others followed and many other brands were revived, perhaps, to replicate that. But
what they were also smart about was also kind of
you could block the name of the brand on the dial of the watch and still kind of recognize it as Nomos. And nowadays they do. They have started filling in the substance a little more as well. I think they do great things with the Lambda collection and others. But I think watches in general have gotten more expensive for two reasons. One, because they have just gotten too comfortable in having these regular price increases, and two, everyone is trying to upmarket themselves because they realized, and this is something that we talked about many times with the Professor and with Aussie Expat watches as well, that the sub 3,500 markets is on the verge of going extinct because of the Apple Watch and because of smartwatches in general. So as much as I do recognize the kind of effort that Nomos has made to become ascendant through a pricing strategy as well, I don't feel comfortable singling them out, because that's, I mean, Tag Heuer does that as well.
I think what Nomos did particularly well from the outset is they realized that there was a perception that in-house movements deserved premium pricing, right? And what they did was they said, "Hey, we're new, but all of our models may not have in-house movements at the outset, but we're committed to that, and we want to get there." So I can't remember if all of their models were in-house movements from the very beginning or not, but that's something that they've made as part of their core.
Yeah, they've pushed that they're all going to be like at some point in time in the future. Like, I know that the one I got, I want to say it was like, I don't know all their movements, you know, but like I know the one that I have is called an Alpha Caliber, which I'm pretty sure was like their cheapest in-house, if I recall. Like, and I think that's why I got it for real, but I really don't recall. But I do remember at the time, like, not everything they did was in-house yet, but it was like, you know, we're up and coming, and like we're trying to be, and like, you know, give us time. And like, I think that's like a message that punters can get behind, and like, you know,
exactly, that was the message that they were trying to communicate, and it also set them up to charge more in the future. And they were also, I think, really either lucky or it just was advantageous timing that I think that Teddy Baldassar, who was kind of one of the leaders online in this whole concept of promoting brands with in-house movements, kind of really latched on to Nomos and said, here's a new brand that's committed to developing in-house movements. And I think the promotion and the boost they got from Teddy Baldassar really helped propel themselves to be, they got a good launch as a result of that.
Professor, teach these people some history with Rolex, please, from year 2000 and Daytona. I'm tired of repeating the same thing about in-house movements. They think Nomos invented the concept.
No, I didn't say that Nomos invented, but I think there was a brand perception around 5, 6, 7 years ago that you should be paying more for brands that claimed to invest and develop their own movements.
Yeah. I think, you know, Nomos is interesting. The only bit is that, going back to the initial question, that, you know, brands like serious brands have an identity crisis. They cannot easily get out of that identity. You know, I'll give you an example. Hublot, they're stuck. They're stuck with this watch they have created, which is a
Big Bang bullshit.
Pardon?
Sorry, Big Bang bullshit.
Yeah, it's a failure. They failed, whilst similarly the AP line succeeded. Now, of course, they were first in the looks of the watch. You know, there was for a long period of time there was a legal battle between AP and Hublot, because one blamed the other that they were infringing on their IP, on their intellectual property. Clearly, AP had the case, and however, they were stuck, and Hublot is stuck. They're not going anywhere. And these brands have serious financial problems at some point. I'm not going to say which one of the two, but you can deduce which one. And going back to Hans's question, which is quite interesting, you know, what happens when a private equity group buys them? Well, I mean, the problem today in the Swiss industry is that, yes, they went through 5 or 6 stellar years of revenue performance, but remember, we usually concentrate on the top 6 or 5, and the rest are getting slaughtered. There are many brands out there that are dying, and one of them was Breitling, and they had to be bailed out in 2020. For many years, they were facing serious financial problems. They were bought for a ridiculous amount.
I think, if just one sentence, Professor, and then continue. Breitling story, for that reason, I think is very exemplary. If we
And their new stuff's awesome, Lord. New stuff's awesome.
If we remember that, because since the whole rhetoric of vertical integration and in-house movements have become so commonplace and so popular, even if it's not always true, we forgot how R&D can be expensive and how much time it takes to actually develop architecturally, from a design perspective and from a technical perspective, your own movement. And Breitling was, like you said, it was literally going bankrupt because of trying to develop their in-house chronograph movement.
Yeah, and also remember, Swatch Group has been playing games over the last several years, because they were controlling. At some point, they were not, and at some point, they went out and said, "That's it. The ETA movement is not going to be shared by anybody except us," and that created huge issues in the Swiss industry. And watchmakers are not found in supermarkets. Yes, okay, robots do a lot, and believe it or not, Patek is using a lot of robots. I mean, do not think that it's the human touch that fixes and produces the watches, even for Patek. So you're paying a lot of money for, I don't know, for the Stearns to have a super yacht.
I'm shocked. I'm outraged. I can't believe it.
Yeah. Never heard before.
Quick interruption. Phoenician Cedar 50 Australian. Thank you so much. I always enjoy your shows, especially your dulcet tones. Thank you. Even with the lack of microphone, I'm glad it's coming loud and clear. Signing out for Christmas break. Merry Christmas, my friend. With the family. Enjoy your family. Enjoy your time. Enjoy your break. I hope to see you again next year. Inshallah, as one says. Well wishes to you and your family, the panelists and viewers. Peace, love, success, and health in 2023. It's the year of the goat. Let's go. 23. No, I mean, it's not the Chinese New Year, by the way. That's year of the rabbit. But since 23 is Michael Jordan's jersey number, I think I like to call it the year of the goat, and it's going to be a great year, hopefully, for all of us and for this channel. John D presents a good argument, and I want to at least give it some voice. I'm not gonna belabor the point too much, but I'm on this side of the argument. As much as I appreciate the intellectual work, design, and everything else that goes into the research and development of a new caliber, John D says, not sure why brands would be willing to risk their integrity to claim in-house, and that's specifically about, say, Bremont or Panerai in the past, claiming that they had in-house or manufactured movements which were simply modified movements.
And Richard Mille as well.
Elsewhere. Of course, Richard Mille is basically building on Renault et Papy for the longest time now, which is AP's complications division, basically. But yes, John says, not sure why brands would be willing to risk their integrity to claim in-house when lots of manufacturers use outsourced movements they heavily modify. Think here Roger Dubuis, or think here Patek Philippe, think here Audemars Piguet, think here Vacheron Constantin, right? They have used for different categories of watches JLC and Lemania movements for decades and decades.
I think it's quite clear that there are many brands that take that risk because they feel and understand that there's a certain segment of the watch collecting community and the purchasing market that will ascribe a premium positioning and premium pricing to brands and maisons that develop their own calibers and create their own movements and put their own movements in their own watches. So it is much about money. It's about money. It's about making sure their brands can be positioned to command the higher market prices. And so it's a risk they're willing to take because they feel that if they don't, they will be relegated to a particular tier and won't be able to break through price ceilings.
Yeah. It's not easy. It's people don't understand that it's a very competitive segment, and also, again, watchmakers are not plentiful nowadays. People are not easily trained, and they're not easily found. One of the tricks that some of them have done is to go to emerging economies and develop watchmaking makers there. I don't want to mention which ones because it will be obvious, but it hasn't really worked, and they're very expensive watches. So it's not easy to claim that you're Swiss made, based in Switzerland, and they're all Swiss. So and Switzerland is not finding it easy. And the problem, Lord alluded to it, the segment of the $1,000 to $3,500 mark for watches is shrinking, which means that all these guys who are sitting there being watchmakers either exit the industry or have to be taken over by the industry. And it's not easy for them to be taken by, the Rolex and AP, because you need at least 4 to 6 years to develop a good watchmaker from the age of 22, 23, moving up the ladder of watchmaking. So some of them do it well. Of course, Lange has a tradition, but others as well, Rolex and so forth, but there aren't that many. So it's a very competitive landscape. And it was easy. Again, it was easy for them to take a basic caliber of ETA manufacturer and then convert it and then modify it. And, RM did the same thing, but you were paying for it $250,000 when he would buy it for $5,000. I mean, right? And then he would charge $250 for it. Of course, there were man hours invested, but they're not anywhere close to the final product. So that, I think that's interesting. But many companies go through difficulties, and Piaget in the 1990s went through a very difficult point in their history, and they were acquired by a private equity group. At that time, it was Investcorp, and Vacheron as well, which is, I think Hans is making a good point, the oldest, whereas AP is a family-owned, being the oldest.
A lot of semantics there, but I think it is still important to make the distinction. Vacheron Constantin is the oldest continually operating watch manufacturer.
Yeah.
Blancpain is the oldest period, which was basically something that Biver and Piguet used as their marketing strategy, and made this consistent focus on, we will never make a quartz watch. Our watches will be complicated and compete with just about anything and everything out there. They basically had waged a full frontal war against both Patek and IWC in their revival. And yes, Audemars Piguet is still, I guess, the independently owned oldest manufacturer, because Girard-Perregaux and Ulysse Nardin and many others are owned by luxury conglomerates. But again, I think sometimes again, we get caught up in these categories and we start playing semantics, whereas
Yeah.
it's of course always important to focus on the specific strengths and weaknesses of one brand or another, rather than simply saying, vertical integration is good, in-house movements are the only good thing. No, actually, everyone should buy their chronograph movements from Lemania in the 20th century and Lange from the 21st. I mean, there's no one, especially in this day and age, there's no one truth in horology, and I guess we don't need Nietzsche to tell us in the 21st century that God is dead. So that's all I can say about that.
Yeah, I mean, even Rolex, by the way, just for the point, is not vertically integrated. So I said it before many months ago.
But
Can
what
you-
do you mean by that? Because they're obviously the most vertically integrated of almost
No.
any. What in what aspect are you saying they're not vertically integrated?
It's not. It's not. They say that they are, but they're not. They're not.
The
The same with
an
Patek.
example, please. Example, please.
No, there are parts that they don't produce. And
Sure,
that's
like the
why they
hands,
have
like the
they have
like
a-
the hands, right?
Well, not only the hands.
Yeah, but what else?
I'm not going to say.
Okay.
I'm not going to say, but yeah, I mean,
You're the professor. Help us out. Teach us.
yeah,
Teach us.
no.
Like,
Let me
I mean,
explain. It's not 50% of the watch that is not produced by them. No. I don't want to exaggerate, but it's not 100%. There are parts,
okay.
and that's why during COVID, it wasn't them that shut down because of the shutdown they had. That everything was falling behind. There were all the others that were shutting down before them, and they ran out of parts that they had to shut down for a few months, right? Was it 3 months or 2.5 months? I forget. From March to May, right? They announced it. I mean, you can find it. But it was really because of all the other suppliers who were unable, and there were smaller ones catering just for Rolex that ran out of people. So even the biggest, most vertically integrated, they are not vertically 100% integrated. Yeah. So
Yeah, but, I mean, but John D asked about the risk of going in house, and what Rolex and Tudor Canisi have done is go be in house for a different reason, and that's to be as vertically integrated from a cost of production and efficiency of scale perspective. So you have smaller independents that want to develop their own movements to establish a more premium brand and premium pricing, and then you have.
Oh, see, that's the thing, by the way. It's like a pendulum swing, because now, as you see, even the jargon is changing to manufacturer, because a lot of the independent brands, a lot of smaller brands, not to mention Tudor itself, right? So again, I'm not saying this as derogatory, but mid-tier brands too, they're much more interested in pulling together their resources into a manufacturer that would allow them to still build their own movements, but not necessarily claiming we have everything in-house. No, we collaborate. We give our part of the know-how. They give, let's say, their part of manufacturing technology, or vice versa. And we start building things together. I mean, Canisi is not only Tudor, it's also Norqain, it's also Chanel. It's how to say, it's like a horological leviathan. It's an interesting project, Canisi. I think it's hard to just reduce it into Tudor's caliber maker at this point. Maybe it started its life as that, but it's not only that anymore. JL, thank you so much. Great show. Have a Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah to you guys. JL, I didn't even realize that you were in my audience. I'm sorry I got unplugged basically from that entire universe. Jump on my show anytime you want. I don't think we have ever been on the same panel. but it's lovely to have you here, and thank you so much for your contribution. Happy holidays to you too.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Jay. I hope you're well. Just to piggyback off that. Sorry.
Tim G says not a Tudor fan. Too many chunky monkeys. I don't know. I mean, I like so much about Tudor. I think eventually I'm gonna get over that Tim G too. I have the same thing. Like, you know, I obsess over Tudor until I put it on my wrist. But the Black Bay 58 is, I think, an absolute hit. I don't care how thick or thin it is. It just sits right on the wrist, if you ask me.
It's a perfectly proportioned watch. And I think from that, Tudor was sent a message from the market: make more of these watches that are very true to these vintage designs, these designs from decades ago. And so they have been doing that. I think with the Ranger, though, was kind of a weird thing where they introduced a watch that was exactly what people said that they wanted. I think they actually were clamoring more for the North Flag, but they got the Ranger, and within 12 hours they said, man, this is boring. It's like, but this is what, wait a minute, you told us that you wanted this exact thing. You wanted the, a vintage Explorer, basically, that Explorer kind of look. And then, but people saw it and they're like, yeah, you know what? I'm glad you did it, but I don't want to buy it. It's like, wait, why? We did exactly what you said.
That's exactly how I felt about that watch. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it in person, but I think they just,
No,
the
I
reaction was like, hey, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't need to see it. I was disappointed. Like how you described it, that was exactly like I wanted that watch. And then like when I saw it, like just seeing the pictures, like, okay, not for me at all. Disappointment.
It's sad because they kind of delivered on what they thought the market would actually.
No, they did exactly what
you.
you said. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, it's like but then like in theory one thing, but then in practice it no.
Literally within 12 hours, people looked at it and said, "This is okay.
No,
you did it."
Yeah.
But no. It's like, and the buzz was like,
maybe you guys are pressing your finger on something important there, because again, as much as I like crowdsourcing and this new social media age, I mean, come on, I even make money on it, so I can't bite the hand that feeds me, at least in part. But ultimately, watch brands have to preserve, one, a certain mystique, but more importantly, a sense of direction that they can't just abandon to oscillations and vacillations of the market. They have to know what they're doing and not just implement something just because it's a hot genre. Let's make a stainless steel integrated bracelet watch because it's the hot thing. Let's make exactly what the audience wants because they will get one. Well, they might not. I mean, that wasn't the watch I wanted. I actually liked it, but
that's it. It's not. The watch market's competitive. I mean, to vote with your pocketbook is very, very difficult thing to do.
St. Peter, your coats and clothes will never stop smelling of cigars once you do. Except there's this old trick that the Italians have stolen from Armenian monks. It's something that they call Carta d'Armenia, Armenian paper. It's like an incense paper, burning paper that burns without flame. And you can kind of fold this and put it in your clothes, or better yet, just like any other form of incense, burn in your closet. No real advice. If you burn your house, I'm not responsible for it.
Because you said put it in your clothes, and I'm like, what?
Just like you do any other kind of incense, right? So with a proper container. For example, I have here like something like this.
Gotcha.
Right? You fold it in here, you burn it, like you fold it like this. You burn it from one end. Let's see.
And you wouldn't put that in the closet with your coats, would you?
I do. That's how I get rid of unpleasant smells. and it burns without flame, but with lots of smoke, which actually takes the place of, and it smells like an old lady, which is how I love my clothes to smell like.
It has a lot of other benefits.
Of course. It brings out my maternal side whenever I wear my clothes, along with the lavender cologne and everything.
Oh,
Can I say something? The comment from
Yes, sir.
Tim G.
Which one? This one?
No, the one it says Rolex the best brand. A few comments upwards.
Okay, I'll find it.
He makes the comparison with cars. I know nothing about cars, so I don't know. I can't comment. You guys can comment. But I do think that although the look appears the same and has evolved in many ways, I don't want to go into that. Rolex is, in my opinion, the best brand. I agree with the comment. But what does best mean? Best, have they won and that's it? Is it the best watch? I don't think so. But is it the best brand? Brand, yes, I think it is the best brand, not the best watch.
Well, I was talking about Jay-Z earlier, right? And he has that famous verse: "Man lie, woman lie, numbers don't."
Yes.
Rolex is the best because it sells as many units and makes as much revenue as its next 5 rivals. That being said, of course, as much as I agree with Tim G as well, as a Rolex fanboy, very openly, it is also very subjective. It's also very, in a way, very slanted as well, because Rolex is the best for me for watches that I like and the kind of money I feel comfortable, which is still a lot of money, to spend on a single watch, right? For another person, that watch might be Roman Gautier. For another person, that watch might be only Lange in platinum. It could be Laurent Ferrier. It could be just Patek. You could be Patekaholic, as that wonderful account has it. Even though he's more excited about Rolex these days, which kind of rings with the truth of Tim G's statement.
Yeah.
One thing Rolex does, I think, better than anybody else is when you see the brand and you're an owner, you feel proud. You feel proud of it. So a lot of that, I mean, when Rolex spends $1 billion plus or whatever they spend to achieve dominance in advertising and product placement in sporting events, the U.S. Open and Wimbledon and golf and yachting, and then in the arts and in exploration, they do so because they want to reinforce to their owners and to prospective customers, that they're the absolute dominating force when it comes to quality, accuracy, reliability, history, heritage, legacy, and all that. And I think they do a phenomenal job, never skimping on what they spend on the marketing and the sponsorships to create that just incredible dominating market presence for future generations. And you get that sense. You get that sense when you watch F1 or when you watch, you see that Rolex clock or the Rolex billboards in the background, and you think as a person, oh, wow, look, Rolex is there, and there's something to be said for that.
What were you saying, Nick? Sorry, Nick was trying to get a word.
Piggyback off that poorly, but I was trying to say, with who they sponsor, you can definitely see what OC's saying. With tennis, with used to be, I think, Roger Federer, he's just a class act. They don't, just to keep that image of cream of the crop, I guess.
It's always the best of the best. It's the best of the best.
Exactly.
It's the Oscars. It's the
Yeah,
Tony.
there you go.
It's the Emmys.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
U.S. Open. It's
The
you know,
classiest, the classiest. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think in terms of branding, they are the best brand. Watch,
Yeah, brand marketing wise, all that.
yeah, not the best. You know, the kind of annual budget these of Rolex for marketing and advertising is astronomical. You know, so it doesn't come anywhere close to all the other brands put together, just because they have this huge, 27-29% market share. So they do F1, they do tennis, they do yachting, they stay away from soccer, which is intentional. But they do the golf, and this is done now for 40-50 years. Remember all the movies and the placements of watches, which was part of the marketing strategy. And we all grew up getting to know Rolex as the brand, and that has stayed on with us. And now, of course, it has multiplied because of the fever of the young generation. But when you have an advertising budget of upwards of 200 million every year dollars, I mean, it makes everybody else look ridiculous. You're gonna repeat Rolex only because you see it everywhere. I remember growing up as a kid, I used to see these amazing ads on National Geographic, guys, and I used to long Rolex on based on that ad that they had, whether it was the Explorer or the Submariner, or I from time to time I would read the Newsweek magazine or Time, and they would have Franco Jeffirelli, and all these guys with the dates, and I would say, my God, this is so expensive. How can I ever afford such a watch? I can't even buy the the cloth. It's amazing what they've done with it. I mean, I would love to write a history of their marketing. Of course, it's impossible because they're more secret than the Pope, and it's impossible to get anywhere close to that.
But the brand value they have established, and they have in a way jealously protected and cultivated over the years, I think is a case study that goes beyond the horological world, and I think that's what Tim G was really his thing. But I mean, the point, all the points that we made still remain as well, because it is at the end of the day very. It's a very specific claim. It's a very subjective claim. Obviously, there's no one good watch. Otherwise, there would be no reason to collect. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a need for all these brands. Dodgers, nice to see you, Dodger. The Dodger family is here, and Ozzy is here. Hey, man, what's up?
Good day, gentlemen.
Hey,
What's up?
Hey, sorry, boys. I actually have to pop off, but it was nice to happy holidays to everybody, and Ozzy as well, OC, Professor, Lord.
Hey.
Thank you.
Merry
for
Christmas,
everything, as
Watch
always.
Nicholas.
Thank you, Nick. So nice to see you, man.
When I was at the U.S. Open a few months back, I had the pleasure of meeting the gentleman. His name's Laurent Delaney, who is basically, he's been at Rolex since 2015, and he oversees basically the multi-billion-dollar budget for their global sponsorship program. Just by sheer coincidence, he introduced himself, very cordial guy, and we got to talking about what he does there. And I mean, to say it's a full-time job is an understatement. But the budget that he has, and the responsibility is just insane. He came from the sports. He came with a sports background. I think he was like the head of sponsorships for ATP, which is a big sports tournament conglomerate in Europe. And he just loves what he does, and he just goes from sporting event to sporting event to just responsible for. I think he was his specialty is in the sporting sponsorships that Rolex does.
What a dream job.
It is for him. He had a smile a mile wide. He had the carte blanche to do whatever he wanted and to spend whatever he needed. And he was
The magic corporate card. Gotta love those things.
Yeah.
So how are you doing, Ozzy? You're getting. I think you are one step closer to your.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, OC. So I've got a video premiering in about 2 minutes about the Hodinkee watch insurance factors that we discussed, which is interesting. That's going to be a real blockbuster poison looking at spreadsheets again. And then our conversation on which Loctite to use on that other channel. I went through all the spec sheets and did a little bit of a video on that. So that's coming out on Christmas Day, another spreadsheet-driven blockbuster poison for everyone to greet them Christmas morning.
You never know. They call my channel boring. So maybe you'll outdo me and achieve even greater success.
Have you ever pulled up a PDF of the data sheet of all the Loctite models, Lord?
I went through. Oh Lord, no. Okay, that's what I was doing. I was going through all the data sheets.
No, I saw that you pulled it up and you had the charts with the different levels of adhesion, and then a lot of people say that you're supposed to heat with the torch or the hair dryer or whatever the bottom side of the screw in order to kind of loosen the Loctite and all that stuff.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. I'm thinking that most people aren't getting it hot enough to really do much, honestly, like even on the 222 and 221. Yeah, there's a few, but basically I think you can just wrench on it. You don't need to heat it up probably, but you do you. But what was different between 221 222 is 222 doesn't flow until you apply pressure. So basically where you dab it, it stays, while the other one will, you dab it and then it starts flowing around the threads immediately.
I can't contain my excitement, so I'll look forward to the video. But please stop this talk, at least on my channel. I don't know what these guys, they might as all right, this is better. This is much better.
Hello.
Junior number 2.
Hey.
Junior.
Sorry, I had to leave that other room because I was having too much fun. I was disturbing my wife. Just talking about Loctite, man. It's exciting.
I do have a stash of Bergeon tools here in my desk, and they very rarely come out. I feel very ill-equipped and untrained.
So I was gonna ask, since I don't like gimmicks and clickbait, I actually was going to talk about this watch, the new integrated bracelet watch by Romain Gauthier. So I'm glad I have a panel so I can actually ask your opinion about it. Have you seen it? What do you think of it? And can you please congratulate me on being right once again, because they are coming up with a Salmon dial model in a little bit. And I
did you predict that? Oh, you predicted that?
I just said Salmon is the new blue, so everyone comes up with a Salmon dial watch now. So
now you get to take full credit for that the whole year long.
No, I mean, I'm not that delusional. I think there's a watch guy on YouTube who said that he actually came up with the Panda Chrono idea for Tudor. I think there's a delusional.
Really? Said, Bruce. That's like Bruce Williams, right?
Yes. Williams? He said 3 months before they came out, he said it clearly. I mean, look at the expertise of this guy who thinks that product cycles for companies is measured in months and not years. And as if Tudor doesn't know how to crib a design from its family member and needs a YouTuber to do that for him. But no, I mean, in a joking way, because people said, like, green is the new blue when it comes to dial colors. I insisted just to say jokingly, because it really doesn't make sense, since that's a much more niche and in a way much more difficult color to execute, because blue is very pleasing to most people, like especially for those of us who were raised in an area and era of more normative gender ideas. If you're a man, you like blue, you like it in all its shades.
More people, more men pick blue as their favorite color than any other color. So
right. So, but when it comes to the Salmon, it just doesn't make sense how popular it is in the world of watches, but it is, right? And every single brand comes up with a limited edition with Salmon. Apparently, they will come up with that too. But for now, they have this full titanium version on a full bracelet. Would anyone like to go first? What do you think of it? What do you make of it? How does it look?
My initial impressions is it looked like a slightly more complicated dial for an H. Moser.
Okay.
I mean, my first reaction is I like it. I think some people will instantly look at that shape and think that it's reminiscent of Vacheron Overseas. That the Vacheron Overseas has a similar kind of angle to how they treat that center link portion.
And the bezel is similar too. Yeah.
I'm impressed with how they redid the case, because obviously this is not the same case as the one that is used for the rubber version. The rubber version, the lugs are much thinner, and the rubber bracelet goes all the way out to the edge like that. Yeah. And so they did do a considerable amount of work thinking about how it was going to look and what the shape and taper of the center links was going to be, because that's the best visually attractive part about the bracelet, is how it looks like it's in thirds, brushed, polished, brushed, and it just kind of contours perfectly. So I think the bracelet is extremely well executed. Is it 100% unique? No, but there's only so much you can do with center links and the design, whether it be a PRX or a Laurent Ferrier or a Streamliner or whatever. And I think they chose a design that looks aesthetically very pleasing.
I'll say a couple of things. I think you focused on things that need to be mentioned. And like you said, for better or worse, the wheel can only be reinvented and reiterated so much before you start brushing up against commonalities, similarities. But I appreciate one thing about this watch, in the sense that it took the integration aspect way too seriously and to its logical end. So you have a watch that has a titanium case, titanium bracelet, titanium dial, and titanium movement. All grade 5 titanium, which makes it very light and nimble, and very much deserving of the name of a sports watch, in the sense it's a dynamic watch. It's a sports activity watch. It's a light watch, and we all know that it's really not everyone's game to achieve these sorts of contrasting finishes of satin brushed and mirror polished surfaces on titanium. Not every brand really does that. So that's something very unique, and that's something they have done on the case, on the bezel, on the bracelet, and to a certain extent on the dial as well, which is rather satin brushed, but still finished in a way that reflects that harmonious ideal of design that this watch represents. Again, this is a full, like the movement has bridges that are made out of titanium as well. So I really do appreciate the fact that this is an integrated watch, if there ever was one.
That's a good point that you bring up, the whole concept of an integrated sports watch, to take that into its core, you know, from the movement to the case to the bracelet, and having synergy there. It reinforces the concept behind the watch.
And again, that is not necessarily a first for them, right? One of the things that I like about the Romain Gauthier brand is they have, well, 3 lines basically. They have the Exception, but the 2 main lines are Heritage and Freedom. And a lot of the models they have, they iterate in both ways that highlights either the conventional, formal, and classier aspects of it, or the more futuristic, sporty elements of it. And when it comes to the C, which to my understanding stands for continuum, right? You know, that they're continuing a tradition. In the Platinum model, which belongs to the Heritage line, they have an 18-karat white gold movement in the same way that, you know, for example, FP Journe has 18 carats pink gold movements. And in the titanium, they did already have a titanium movement for the Freedom line, but this time they of course have it on the bracelet as well. So it's I think it's a great concept. It's a great idea. I would love to be able to try one. I haven't had the chance yet, at least not with the bracelet. To me, it's very fascinating, and I don't actually mind the resemblances. I mean, it's not like Overseas itself is such an original watch to begin with for someone not to be able to touch it in any way and iterate certain aspects of it. Even though I think what's more similar to the Overseas is really the bezel more than the bracelet. But you know, again,
I think this is they wanted to show or have consistency between the rubber bracelet version and the integrated metal bracelet version. So I don't think they were copying. I think they just wanted to modify the version that they already had and not make it look dissimilar. Otherwise, they would look totally different. They had to have that angle for that center link portion, or else it would look inconsistent from the rubber bracelet version.
How do these bracelets feel with the end links using like a 6mm spring bar? It just seems like the flimsiest hinge available, and I don't know if that affects how it feels. I've got one watch that's like that, but it's certainly not of this class.
And what matters more than anything, I think, is the amount of articulation on that final link. You know, where it attaches to the case. How much does it come down? How much space is there, you know, between the case and that first link of the bracelet? That's. I mean, you really want something that conforms well to the wrist. But looking at the underside of it, it looks like a very comfortable looking bracelet. There's, you know, that it looks like it's those links are right up against each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's again like, you know, I mean, you are very perceptive, OC, but really to respond to the question that Ozzy is asking, you really have to not only put it on, but actually go through life a little bit. So it's that's actually a serious problem, Ozzy, with integrated bracelet watches. I mean, if you don't have a friend, as if it's not already too hard to buy a lot of these things, right? But if you don't already have a friend who can lend you this kind of watch a few days, and exactly the kind that you're considering, you will never know. Watch Society, which is actually a channel that I really like, he ranted against the Royal Oak for the longest. You muted yourself, I think. He ranted against the Royal Oak for a long while because after owning it, he hated the bracelet. Whereas I'm dying to own a Royal Oak. Hopefully, I'll get one for my 40th, and I love the bracelet. And but I wouldn't know that
I
if
saw that video and I loved his take. I don't think he was just salty. I think genuinely there are limitations to that bracelet design that
No, I didn't
gel well
mean,
with him.
but you wouldn't know that unless you tried it for yourself. You
So,
can.
I'm holding this bracelet as tightly as can be done,
Yeah.
and then you can see the how much it comes out from the case.
Mhm.
That, and your wrist has to be able to, especially the top part of your wrist has to be able to handle that, or else
Yeah.
it's not going to look.
By the way,
I've got one that costs about 100 times less, the Casio mod, and
Mhm.
it's not a very comfortable bracelet. But it has the same
This link
thing
won't
where
go
it's
any
very
further.
stiff. Yeah.
Yeah, this link won't go any further down than that. It just right here.
I want to recognize Dodger's super chat for 10 zloty. Thanks for firing up your boring channel tonight. Thank you, Dodger. Yeah, it's if you can, again, if you have the chance, at least try these on before you ever order them. But really, when it comes to integrated bracelet watches, people get picky about certain kinds of déployant buckles, even, right? Because sometimes it just doesn't fit the contours of your wrist because it's a generic product. What can you do? But with integrated bracelet watches, yeah, I mean, you got to try it for yourself. I love the AP bracelet. It might be because I learned to love it. It might be because because I just love the design so much that I'm willing to suffer. The French, as they say, like il faut souffrir. For beauty, you have to suffer. So maybe it's that, but for comfort level,
Yeah.
you gotta try.
But from a feature perspective, the AP Royal Oak bracelet is falling behind because you have watches like this that have integrated that at the clasp, that those micro adjustments that now the new Patek Philippe 5811 has, which is almost a direct emulation of what Vacheron Overseas has in their watch, where right at the clasp you have the ability to pull it out to get another couple of millimeters of adjustment, and you don't have that on the Royal Oak. And whether you need it or not, it almost becomes a checkbox in the social media review of the watches. Like, yeah, I mean, the Royal Oak is great, but it doesn't have micro adjust. Whether you need it or not, it becomes one of those things that becomes a negative that they have to eventually have that box checked so they can overcome those stupid objections.
Sure. I mean, I can understand that. I mean, people say the same thing about Royal Oak's, water resistance or depth rating too, whereas I never cared. I do think it's important now that they invested in an in-house movement that's a different design that looks pretty and it has a higher power reserve. I do think that's significant. It's not nothing to go from 40 some hours to 54 hours of power reserve. It is important. I wish it were better. I want to also add one more thing. This watch, as you have seen, has a hand wound movement, which I think is a little different than most integrated bracelet sports watches that we see. So it has a different kind of case profile, of course, because of that. It would change how it sits on your wrist. And Tim G's point I want to highlight before everyone else continues to weigh in. Some people just don't like watches to be too light. They like some sort of heft. So Tim G says, for example, I have a Laurent Ferrier in titanium. I love it, but it's too light. I prefer heavy watches.
So just to one up OC, this one also needs a minimum radius as well. Is this desirable, OC?
It depends. If it fits your wrist comfortably, that's all that matters. But to Lord's point, you have to try it on. No, I mean, I know the age of the internet is you can buy watches online, but there's no excuse for. And I see a lot of people that buy and then they are disappointed with the watch once they get it. and they've never seen the watch before they buy it, which I don't know why you would ever do that, but apparently a lot of people do. But I mean, part of it is being spoiled,
Pro-
being in New
Professor,
York.
were you saying something before we jump back in?
Yeah. What is the price of the watch?
41K, I think. Swiss francs, but it's more or less equal these days.
Expensive.
Yeah, I think they should keep it.
I'm sure they won't have problem selling it, but yes, it's I mean, the segment is that, I mean,
Yeah.
by now a standard Royal Oak extra thin jumbo 16202, if you can get it, it's 33K at retail. So it's not suddenly Roman Gautier, which is really a more artisanal object. If you're into that, I would rather get a Royal Oak as well. Don't take me wrong. Doesn't sound so expensive since it has some unique aspects to it that the Royal Oak doesn't. But if you like that design, you like that design, and in my case, it is that too. By the way, I am actually smitten by the Arabic numerals at quarters and the fact that the 12th is oversized. And I like, again, the fact that they have the freedom line like that, and they have, for those of you who don't like the Arabic numerals for whatever reason, even though the 12th here is too oversized, they have the Heritage Collection, which is in platinum, so even more expensive. With
my
the
favorite precious metal,
platinum. Yes, it's in platinum with a white gold movement, and it's also, again, a beautiful watch, and it does feel almost like a different thing with the white gold dial and Roman numerals on it. It has a different vibe, even though it's exactly the same design.
Yeah, and something aesthetically I want to bring up, and I don't bring it up in order to dissuade anybody from liking the watch. It's more things that I noticed that I think you should be aware of when you're looking at the watch and be okay with it, because you don't want to notice it later on and go, oh, I don't like that. But it's, especially in the new one, what's very visible is that the center line of the watch is above the midpoint of the case. So that's something that you can see here with the longer indices at the 4 and 5. They're longer than the indices at the top because the movement is placed higher in the case. It's not placed exactly in the center of the case. So the 3 and the 9 are actually higher on the dial. And so if that's a thing that bothers you, like you're not seeing that right away, but especially on the new one, you can really tell.
Yeah.
This one, everything's kind of monochromatic, so it's less noticeable. But on the new one, it is visually, you can see that it's kind of stepped up. And I would like to see what it looks like when the 6, when the arrow hand comes all the way down to the 6, what it looks like, because it may reach the top of the 6, it may reach the middle of the 6, but it's definitely not going to reach the end of the dial because of the way it's in the case.
Actually,
it's totally disguised in that shot, right? They do that. I don't know if they do that intentionally, but
not really. Actually, I think it's with the Arabic numerals. It's very obvious, and to me, it's one of the appealing things about the watch, with the off-center seconds sub-dial and the kind of
more open space on the bottom half,
rays of light that come. It feels as if it's an intentional push right towards the. I'm sure, again, OC, I'm not in their research and development department, so I don't know whether it was a technical problem they were trying to cover. It wouldn't be the first time that a watchmaker has done that. Patek does it all the time. The more their cases grow bigger and the lazier they get, they do all sorts of visual tricks to stuff small movements into oversized cases. But in this case, the watch just has a certain lack of symmetry that to me seems intentional with the placement of the crown, with the placement of the small seconds. That I don't think it's a fault that they are then trying to disguise, but I can be wrong completely.
No. It's again, it's and to Jonathan's point in the chat, he's always making fun of me because I bring to light some of these aesthetic issues, and it's not meant to denigrate the watch, but I think people should know it and see it before they buy it and not like it at some point in the future. So buy it because you buy it and love it because you do notice that thing, just like you said, Lord, that it's something that you find visually attractive and you think
I do.
is
I do,
and actually adds to the design and is one of the reasons why you like the watch, rather than you buy it and you notice, oh well, why are the indices longer on that side and why are they shorter here and why does the movement imbalance? That's why I bring it up for people to make an informed decision when visually when they're evaluating these pieces.
I mean, but by all means, again, by the way, Forbin was saying, holy moly, is the crown blue? In the rubber strap watch, which is in a way more italicized in trying to look sporty, with those rays of light emanating from the center of the second subdial, there is a piece of rubber that is on the crown that matches the color of that blue on the dial, but that's not the case with the integrated bracelet model. Neither is it the case with the Heritage model in platinum, but again, that's a different watch, of course, for better or worse.
Look, I think it's an acquired taste. I mean, if I had 41, 42, how much is it, Lord? 41? Okay.
The integrated bracelet version is 41. I think the rubber one is a little cheaper. I don't exactly remember what it was.
Yeah.
And the platinum one, platinum one, is a little more expensive.
Platinum, I think like aluminum and platinum. Yes. Well, if I had 41, would I buy this one? Or, as you said, an AP? I think I would get an AP, no doubt. Right? This is an acquired taste. Beautiful, no doubt. It's a unique, has a new approach to many things, right? The bracelet, as you guys said, I'm not going to repeat it here, but it's an acquired taste. Again, we need to recognize the effort and what they have done. It's a beautiful piece, but if you have 41 and you have all the other watches, by all means, or even if you don't have the other watches and you still have 41, it still is a very interesting piece, no doubt.
Ozzy, I think sorry, Ozzy, I thought you were adding something.
No, adding something to the baby, but not the watch discussion at the moment.
He was just slurping his tea, right? As Badger was. Jonathan JQH has an interesting point. The off-center placement creates tension and makes the watch design more riveting.
Yes, riveting.
Let me ask, how thick is the watch?
955.
Okay, relatively thin.
Yeah, I mean, look, again,
Okay.
it's not ultra thin, but I think one thing they handled with creating
Very nice.
this sort of hand wound movement with either titanium, well, in this case, titanium bridges, they managed to come up with something that's both elegant but also thin and light. I mean, in titanium watches, that's why I'm looking forward to trying this watch. In titanium watches, most of the weight is almost from the movement sometimes. So if you have a titanium movement, this might feel non-existent on the wrist. So it's an interesting experience. JQH says, I appreciate the movement execution on a serious note, but in my opinion, the watch design is a mess. That's an entirely Jonathan point to make. I mean, like, to argue that it's riveting and then actually it's a mess and I don't even like it and I just said it to be a contrarian. Well, bonus points for that, Jonathan.
It's expensive, and I would definitely pick it over an Endeavor or a lot of the Laurent Ferrier and a lot of the other choices, even the Odysseus, in terms of brands that have tried to come up with something beautiful and elegant looking in the integrated steel sports or metal sports part of the market. Even the way they did the scallops on the bezel is unique.
I like it. I like it. Although I have to say, again, I appreciate this in a way that I don't. A lot of the integrated bracelet watches, especially the latecomers, because again, love it or hate it, I kind of love it. It's a unique design, and it's again recognizably Lange. It's not trying to be something else. And that's invariably attractive to me. I also love the fact that, again, any lack of balance and asymmetry in the watch is somehow reined in to be utilized. So the pushers that kind of double up as faux crown guards actually help you cycle through both the days of the week and the dates.
I'm gonna challenge you a little bit on it, Laura. Just to be devil's advocate. I think when they designed this, I'm not in their heads. I don't know if they were intentionally doing this, but I think I'll just say that the right side of the case, how they have that little flare out there, that is something. Those wings are something that is reminiscent of the Nautilus. That is a design feature that the Nautilus kind of, yeah. And I think when they designed the design of the bracelet, those two center links that kind of come out and stick down, that is something that the Royal Oak is known for, is having those two center links that go down from the case and reappear in the bracelet. It doesn't reappear, I believe, in the steel version, but I think that is a design that they wanted to have there that showed a similarity, created a familiarity with the Royal Oak. Unfortunately, that's my opinion. Of course, there's only so many ways to design a bracelet. We talked about that earlier, but I think
I don't even agree on this one, because Nautilus, for better or worse, looks like a Greek urn in a way, and it has that sort of balance in the sense that the big ears come out on both ends. In this case, there's no symmetry, and those are pushers, and not
it would have been blatant if they did it on both sides of the case. It would have been a complete ripoff.
Well, I mean, and they did.
I mean, the Nautilus is an acquired taste, another kind of.
By the way, I mean, if my aunt had testicles, she would be my uncle as well. Also. But,
I'm just trying to, like, when I see this watch, just to create a counterpoint, like my eyes immediately gravitate to the wing on that right hand side, and I think Nautilus, and I look at the bracelet and how busy it is, and I think it's just a very busy, complicated version, and they were trying to achieve something that was, I don't know if it was Royal Oak inspired, but it had elements of the Royal Oak. That's that train track, those two train tracks that go down the center. That's just my, that's what I think when I see it. I don't see it as original as maybe other people do.
I mean, the Royal Oak is the original. So if there is anything that resonates with the Royal Oak, that's kind of, that's part of the game. That's part of the genre. That's the realm that they're working in.
By the way, do you like the blue dial the best on the Odysseus?
Yes, but that's also because of the decoration rather than the. I actually like, in terms of the color, I like the I like the gray of the white gold, but rather than the Grenet kind of center dial, this has a more plain sort of finish that I'm not very intrigued by. I saw both of them. Well, no, actually, the steel one I've actually never seen in person. The white gold and titanium I saw, and I like the execution of the titanium versions dial a little better, but the color wise, color scheme, I like.
Interesting.
Because you will see there's kind of a frosted finish in the middle, you see?
Oh, got it. Got it.
And the same in steel, which is a richer kind of blue.
Nice dial.
I think I like the blue. It's a very nice, rich midnight blue.
But the bracelet, they need to go to B&W.
What does that mean?
Well, it's look for me. I'm wearing glasses and my gray eyes are getting grayer by the day. It's wonderful to see the day and the date. I can finally look at a watch and figure out what it says.
Good point.
And so this is great, like the IWC, the pilot one, the huge one with the crown that is good for usage of multi-purpose tool. The bracelet doesn't. It's too, sorry to say, German. Not elegant. I'm sorry to say, guys. I have to say it. It's not as beautiful as the AP bracelet. It's more refined, the AP bracelet.
I agree, and ironically, that bracelet is basically designed like an industrial conveyor belt, and it is one of the most elegant bracelet designs ever made, even though it's by definition not to everyone's liking. And the fact that flare out that the OC showed earlier in the show from the case is of course a significant element that affects the comfort depending on the contours of your wrist.
No, I take your point. Look, it's a beautiful watch. For me, the dial is readable, and thank God for this dial. But the rest it's an acquired taste. If I find it and buy it, great. I'll wear it and say I have it. Who else has it? Well, very few. But the bracelet, they could have done something more. Maybe it's a statement standing out because they're not known for making steel watches, of course. And they're late to the game. Again, it could be a statement. We're different. Like IWC with its bracelets. I mean, they're very different and ugly, I would say. Yeah, it looks, I don't know. You wore it, Lord. How did you feel about it, the bracelet?
I mean, the funny thing is the white gold was already someone else's, so it was more or less shrink wrapped, and that was on rubber anyway, so I couldn't try that on. But rubber bands in general, as long as they are cut and arranged properly for your wrist, they wear quite well and comfortably. It's the bracelets that I was mostly taken, again, having my overly feminine and fragile wrists. I could only guess the feeling, and I was mostly taken by the fact that they had that multifaceted finishing so beautifully done overall on the watch, and especially on the bracelet. I thought that was truly ice cold. I mean, it was just a beautiful thing to contemplate. But yeah, that I would probably, if I ever got this watch, I would want it probably on the rubber band rather than the bracelet, because
Yeah.
the bracelet is impressive, but I don't really like how it looks, honestly. I just don't think it's.
This is really ugly. It's really, really ugly. I don't know what to say. This
I
is
mean, the bracelet is not they doesn't. I'm not talking about the issue of comfort. I mean, obviously, this could be as comfortable or even more than the AP, no issue. But it's the aesthetics. I mean, it's again, if you get it and they don't have the rubber band, and they give you this, obviously, you're not gonna say no, right? Who's gonna say no?
this is what I'd expect from like a sub $200 fashion watch that's doing the
Oh.
integrated bracelet style, where they've got a regular watch and then they've made the bracelet look like it's an integrated bracelet. You know what I mean? Like this is horrible.
I'm glad. See, I've kept quiet and let everybody else jump in, and I've faded into the background now.
Here,
I'm allowed to be spicy.
onion.
I'm uninformed, but yeah.
Looks
Yeah,
good
I-
on your wrist. I mean, it's pushing the boundary of your wrist because the
Yes.
lug seems really, really big.
No, it's. I mean, it's like on the bracelet. Also, that's another very perceptive OC. I think that's the other reason I would prefer it on, the leather band version. I find a little tacky, the leather band they use, but I would love to own it on the rubber band, because precisely you can arrange it to sit a little nicer on the wrist. For that reason, I think that's the other reason I prefer it. Again, for me, the social media wrist shot and wrist roll, I do it because it's part of the genre. It never looks flattering on me in that way, because I'm a big guy, relatively speaking, but I do have chicken wrists. It is what it is. So when you close up and look at just the watch, even the 36 millimeter date just looks too large on my wrist. But
I find
But when I
you
wear it-
have to. Sorry,
when
go
I
ahead.
wear it, it looks okay. A watch like this would actually look perfect, but not on a wrist shot or wrist roll. Sorry, Ozzy, go ahead.
Yeah, so I find for the wrist shot, I find going to the 3x zoom or 4x zoom on your camera provides a more natural looking shot. I don't know if you do that or if it's available on your phone, but having that wide angle, it's as if you've put your eyeball like 5 inches from the watch. It's just not normal. So at 3x, you sort of need to hold it at eye level to get enough distance to get the same shot. But it looks a lot more normal.
Yeah. I mean, again, I feel like I'm not sending, a dick pic to my romantic interest. So
For that, you need 0.6 or 0.3. Get a 0.1
Thanks for
wide
the
angle.
opinion. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
trying to focus on the watch rather than how it looks on my hairy, fragile wrists. So, but yes, that's a good suggestion for, eye level would be probably a more natural way of representing how it looks. But people want to see the watch, not my hairy wrist, or at least that's what I think.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, it still results in the same composition, but just the angles will be a lot more natural. So it's just a more natural representation of what you would expect to see in real life if you do 3x, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's I like actually the fact that not only because Ozzy really says what he thinks, but I think it makes our point in general. the fact that people have very strong opinions about it, because most of the integrated bracelet sports watches, people say, yeah, if they offer me one, I'll take it.
Can I have
Yeah,
a personal question, Lord? Let's say you wander into the Lange boutique. The fairies have sprinkled good luck on you, and they say they have the version on the rubber bracelet that you like. Is it something financially that you are prepared to pull the trigger immediately and say, "This, I'll take it"? Is that something that where you all consideration of all the other potential watches that you may be able to purchase, those immediately go to the back and say, "Okay, yeah, I can buy that"?
No, I would rather get the 16202 in steel. If we are talking about a dream purchase from the boutique, I would rather get that. But
Well,
I
that's
don't
not my hypothetical, though. My hypothetical isn't that you would also.
I don't like AP as a contemporary brand. I would never, even given the opportunity at a discount, I would never buy anything from the AP boutique, because I think they can go to hell. But I would rather buy a Royal Oak in an ideal scenario, in a platonic scenario.
Yeah, that wasn't the hypothetical, though. You're not getting offered the AP. You're just getting offered the Lange Odysseus on the rubber strap.
No, I think I would rather get an AP on the secondary market.
Okay, so it's a no. You wander in, this watch gets offered to you. It's a no.
I mean, they did not offer it to me, but they could get it to me in 3 months, I'm sure.
Okay.
I have decent relationships with Lange's boutique, but I'm not sure if it's worth it at that price point.
These are expensive. What are they? They're 70,000 plus, or are they more expensive than that?
Wow.
I can't remember.
Wait. From the boutique?
From the boutique? No.
No.
More 100,000?
No. What are you guys talking about?
Odysseus.
Calm down. Wait, not everyone at once. The white gold is 45, I think.
Steel.
That's it?
The steel version, the steel is like maybe 30 on the bracelet, or a little less, something like that.
Oh, I had no idea it was that cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not cheap, but it's not too expensive for what it is. Again, I mean, the expensive Langes are like, if you want to get limited editions, or like a platinum Datogaf from from the boutique, etc. That's one.
I guess I always I thought of these as being even more prestigious and more expensive than a Zeitwerk. I don't know why I thought that, but it's obviously not the case.
It's the steel is 25,000 pounds.
Yeah. So like 30, let's say, in US dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to pull up an older price list, but we can reflect on it.
And they go for far more in secondary?
Oh, yes. Especially the steel.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. I did not know. I've just had very little.
You can find it 60, 70,000 pounds. So you buy it for 25. If you can't. You need to have a history. They wouldn't sell it to you. If you go in and say hi, they'll say, "Who are you?" And then
how much history are you talking about? Because I can't imagine any of their watches are cheap.
Yeah, because all of a sudden Aussie expat wants to get an Odysseus.
No, I just happened to have bought some women's jewelry from an owner that also sells Lange. I'm like, is this enticing? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. This is a price list basically before the first increase this year. I don't know if they had another increase, but it used to be 30,900 USD for the stainless steel, and used to be 43,500 for white gold. I think there has been at least a 10 10% upcharge to that, but we can say list price, the stainless steel Odysseus right now is 30, let's say 32 and a half, and the white gold on either the leather strap or the rubber strap is 45,000. Let's say that.
Not stratospheric for Longa, actually.
No, I mean, at least they did imagine this at a certain point in time to be one of the entries into the brand, not necessarily purely on price point, because there are Saxonias that are cheaper, but to attract a different kind of customer who would be more into this particular genre of expression, whether we are talking about sports chic or sports activity or integrated bracelets, however you want to address this particular design approach.
No, in terms of the price point, they hit the price point because it's within that level of steel watches where everybody else is playing the game. So they're not below 20, they're not above, again, it's pounds, but 30,000 bucks, 32, depending on currency fluctuation. That's where everybody plays. 30, 25, 28.
Is this a traditional? I mean, I'm looking at the movement and the way they have the rotor. I mean, they have the plate with the Geneva stripes, and they have the rotor that's on the outside of it. It seems like there's so much that plate is so big; it covers up so much of the movement.
Mm.
And then they have the rotor that's on top. Is that movement featured in other watches or no?
No, but then again, it's not that much different than the Zaxomat pure and simple. So I mean, they probably claim somewhere that it's a newly designed thing, but it's not much different than other, in terms of its architecture, from other self-winding movements that Lange has.
I'm not a movement guy, so for me to say like it doesn't blow me away doesn't mean anything. It has no credibility to it whatsoever. But it's just that it looks odd having a rotor just going over a base plate like that.
Let me see. I mean, this
looks similar, yeah. It's similar.
This one has a balanced cock, whereas the Odysseus one has a balanced bridge, which basically gives added stability and more shock resistance. But beyond that, of course, the day-date display is another module, but it's not an integrated automatic movement they designed from scratch necessarily for the Odysseus.
And thank you to Jonathan for correcting me. It's not Geneva stripes technically.
Right. It's Glashütte Ebbing.
Guys, this has been fun. I got to jump off to the family is wanting me to do something for them for dinner, but it's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me on, Lord.
Thank
Professor,
you.
Thank you.
Audience.
Have a good one, OC.
Have a great evening. Happy holidays, everyone. Peace out.
Bye. Thank you.
Happy holidays. Bye. Happy Hanukkah. Yeah, we can have another 10 or 15 minutes, guys. So if you, Danny, thanks for being here. Eric, L, all the people who have just joined. We'll be here for another 10, 15 minutes. So if you have liked the show, if you learned something from it, if you have enjoyed your time, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't. We're here all the time, basically, every day, early shows, late shows. We try our best. And if you want to squeeze in last minute questions, requests, and anything else, send it via super chats preferably. That would be really kind and appreciated. Yeah, so tell me, Ozzy, are you getting your are you getting your matching Daytona after what you got for Mrs. Aussie Expat?
Yeah, so it wasn't a flat no. So that was good. They said it will be difficult considering how soon it was since we took delivery of the full gold Daytona.
Mhm.
But in the new year, things should be possible. And that, Platona or Meteorite Daytona is worth considering. I mean, they understand my collection. There isn't much left to go for. So they understand why I would make that request. Even wanted to clarify if the Meteorite Pepsi was something that would interest me. I said no. I like it, but my wife doesn't, so that's all there is to that one. So it's plausible. I also got clarification that Meteorite is like Platona is somewhere around 10-1 for gold in terms of how many they get, and that Meteorite ends up being much harder than that, maybe like 3-1 or more compared to a Platona. So it was a good, honest discussion, and the answer wasn't no. But as with all things, you don't really, and talk is cheap, delivery is what counts. There's certainly been lots of people like, oh, they told me I'm next, and stuff like that. Like, but at least they didn't say anything stupid like, oh, wait list, or or maybe in 2 years, or like nothing along those lines. None of the usual stop talking to us type
You
of
get it by end of
conversations.
February.
It's plausible. Like at this point, it's sort of like it's dice rolls as far as I can tell. As in, there just needs to be a circumstance where they're sort of in a pinch. They need to get rid of it. There's only certain people that they can get rid of it to, and they can't all fly to Las Vegas. They're not always liquid. So I'd say it's in the realm of possibility, the same way that the gold Daytona was in the realm of possibility. It just has to be the right circumstance. And this month it may be the right circumstance too, because they were saying like they're quote unquote having to grind it out this month in terms of sales. It's just things are tight.
Yeah. Let me ask, did they quote a price?
No, but I mean the Meteorite Daytona is a catalog piece, so it does have the price. The platinum, I don't know.
Oh, they didn't tell you. Okay.
Yeah, they assume that you can pay for it basically. But I think the platinum, I asked around, and someone lambasted me for, I was like, oh, if you need to know the price, then maybe you can't afford it or something like that. I'm like, no, I'm just doing a little bit of homework. I'm trying to compare the gray prices to what they sell out of the thing, just so I know how difficult it is. Like, how ridiculous is it to ask for one? But the best I could get is somewhere around 75, 78,000.
Ozzy, it's the internet is full of fools who memorize a few different phrases and repeat that ad nauseum. That's one of the things that people learn, and usually people who say that kind of thing never had seen that much money anyways. They have just learned
right.
It's like those.
Well, they're just assuming that I can't do the same thing, basically.
No, I mean it's just like the kind of fool who keeps saying like it's chess, not checkers, whereas they have never played checkers or chess or won a single game at it their entire life.
Right.
It's
many times they're so willing to rattle these off, they don't realize they're making the opposite point to what they were trying to make. Because the adage is just so tasty, they want to rattle it off, and they forget. It's like, oh, wait a minute, what was I trying to do here?
But yeah, I mean, again, sometimes because the professor says things in a very strong minded way, in a prophetic fashion, sometimes people don't take it seriously, but he did tell you that you will get. Well, he did say you will get both of them before your anniversary. You got
Right,
one,
right.
and maybe the one.
If I'd asked for another gold one, I think I could get it.
They
But
would.
not-
Yes, for
not,
sure.
Not the platinum, not a meteorite. But since
you
seeing my
just-
wife's gold one, I don't really feel like
Yeah.
yellow gold or
If you
Everose.
just said maybe like white gold on Oyster Flex without the meteorite dial, I think maybe they would have an easier time sourcing you that than a
Yes.
meteorite or platinum Daytona.
Yeah. If I asked for the second one, I would have the problem of having to receive it. I think that's what would probably happen.
No, you'll get it. You'll get both of them.
Yeah, definitely. I think things are just substantially weak, and yeah, it's easy enough, I think. I mean, for a qualified customer, they have issues around, I think, qualifications, as in they're not literally allowed to sell someone a Daytona unless they have certain purchase history, and that's
And they know
not
you.
up to
Ozzy.
them. Yeah.
They know you. They know you. So for them, it's an easy sale. It's an easy sell. Sorry, and they're just playing the usual game of, it's the we need to think, and I don't know, and but they'll deliver both of them.
Yeah.
You can choose whichever you want. This is a
Yeah.
buyer's market for all the people who are looking for watches. I
I believe that. Yeah.
23 will be a very good year if you're beginning the hobby, if you're starting the hobby.
Yeah.
Well,
I believe that for sure.
as it happens, Professor, usually the most people who start the hobby start at the hype, not when things
Yeah, I know.
go down.
I have some news as well.
That's why I'll
Yeah.
give it to you right away. But that's why commitment and kind of long-lasting dedication to learn things for yourself, accumulate the knowledge, share the knowledge. That's why this kind of platform is important, because if you enter the market just by the flow of things, chances are you're entering it at a moment where the prices are going up. What's your surprise or news, Professor?
Well, I'm continuing my quest. But if capitalism was founded on my perception of quest, they would have failed many years ago. Capitalism would have failed. So my quest is not as engaging, I would say, as Ozzy. So it is. I'm flirting, but the quest is really theoretical still. Anyway, I said to my my contact, I asked her, and I said, please tell me which of the three do you think I should get? So it's Ozzy's one of Ozzy's favorite. So the Platinum Daytona,
Hmm.
the date, the favorite of General Saad, and then I threw in another favorite of the General, which is the our Eisenkiesel.
Mm.
So I said, you choose on my behalf. I have Lord's favorite, Daytona Platinum. Then I have Generals, and then I have the Eisenkiesel. She said, okay, let me investigate. I said, which is the hardest of the three?
Hmm.
She said, well, all three are hard. I said, oh, okay, now you're playing the AD again. Don't give me that. She said, well, to be honest, Eisenkiesel is a difficult one. This is the Sperm and Blood.
Yeah, it's the difficult one because you need actual people to produce the dial, that the bleeding and jacking off and similar things.
Yeah, I remember.
Really, Eisenkiesel. Like I looked at the Eisenkiesel gray prices. It's
It's really
certainly expensive, and probably very rare at the AD. Probably rarer
How
than
much is how much are
Daytona.
they quoting, Ozzy, if I may ask?
I was seeing on Chrono 24 in the 85,000 range, which is a lot over any other day date right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, no, but I would say, did you ask at the AD?
Oh, whether how hard that would be? No, they're trying to get me to buy a day date like it would save their lives. They keep asking me every time I go in, "You're interested in a day date?"
No, but not the Eisenkiesel, right?
No, I cut them off right at the time. I don't like that watch. I just tell them like, no, I don't like the watch.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we I mean, it's not, it is a stone dial, so I kind of feel bad, I don't want to, it's a creation of the deity, so I don't mean to be blasphemous, but it's truly an ugly, occurrence as a natural phenomenon. Eisenkiesel or whatever else. I mean, no German name can even dignify it. That's just a bad look.
I don't think it looks. To me, the dial is nice. I'd say maybe I prefer this over the other dials. That's just me. But I was doing my research. So the Eisenkiesel is the Falcon's Eye was in the family of asbestos, which doesn't sound very good. The Eisenkiesel is in the family of quartz. So this could literally be your best quartz watch.
Yeah.
Hey, Ozzy, you're not only a dad, but you got the dad jokes as well.
I think at the AD, this is around 40 something. 40. Again, I'm sorry, I'm referencing.
It might even be like a little higher because the one, I think a baseline is. Oh wait, does it have the price there, or does it say
it does? But I think the professor means the non-baguette version. So I was trying to pull that. The diamond version was 51 almost. This is 40.
Yeah,
oh wait, that's not Eisenkiesel. Sorry.
No. They don't have the price. Do they
Wait,
have it in the US?
Okay, Eisenkiesel always comes with baguette or not?
Always with a baguette, yeah.
Okay, then it's 51,000.
50. Yeah, it's
Oh, they have it.
expensive.
They have it. Wow,
Yeah, it's a
because
catalog
in
item.
the UK, they don't display the price. That's very
Interesting.
Wow.
So it is substantial, very substantial. But it does have those nice settings. The baguette settings are very nice.
I think, again, it's some people have very strong feelings about jam setting period and diamonds, especially on a man's watch. But if you ask me, it's the way Rolex does the baguette diamond setting on a watch dial just looks amazing. Exactly like how it should. It's like a more elegant way of presenting what the loom filled baton indices usually look. It's simple but beautiful.
It pains me to say, but that is the case. And
it is.
I've found that the diamond baguette dial platinum Daytona is apparently probably like 10x times harder than the regular platinum Daytona. And so, yeah, it pains me to say that I probably only have a chance for the regular platinum Daytona, but the diamond is better. I would.
No,
and it's just not a chance.
You know what? No, ask them for the diamond and wait until the summer. You have nothing to lose.
They may never get one. That's my understanding. It's like they just simply may never actually get one. Like it really is that rare. Like they'll get maybe 4 platinum Daytonas during the year, but they will never get a diamond set one. Is my understanding is that that's the rough, plausible range of supply, even for a very flush AD.
Right, right. Lord, can I ask you, if
sir.
you go and look at the platinum day date, does it tell you the price in your USA?
I don't think the platinum has a price.
I think
Check,
think
but I
platinum-
don't think it does.
I don't think platinum anything has a price on the
Okay.
website, but let's double
Okay,
check.
because it's in the UK, it doesn't even have the Eisenkiesel. So I'm surprised that you guys have the price on that. That's very interesting.
No,
Yeah,
on request
price on
for the
request.
platinum.
Yeah, for all of the dial configurations too. So it's not just ice blue, everything.
Okay, and is it the same for the Daytona Platinum as well?
Yes,
no
but
price.
let's, let's double check. I think anything platinum, almost as a rule on Rolex website, is price upon request.
Okay, okay. So at least there is uniformity with the UK. All right. Well, I asked, and I'm gonna wait and see what she says. I'll let you know.
Oh, so
yeah.
she's still researching. She couldn't just tell you which one off the top of her head. Like, I mean,
No, I
you
said
didn't
to her,
clarify what criteria. You didn't
Yeah, I said to
clarify
her, I
what.
want to get the one and done. I
Uh-huh.
don't care the price. Tell me which of the three, Daytona,
Right.
Eisenkiesel, or Day Platinum, with diamonds. We'll go, crazy on the whole thing. We'll bankrupt the household here to get a watch.
I personally think I've said it before that the Daytona is a good one because it's more unisex out of the watches you've described.
Mm.
So if you pass it down, and I hope your family stays wealthy enough to keep that in the family, that it would be one that could be cherished by either
You
a male
mean
or female
the
heir.
Platinum with the baguettes, Daytona?
Yeah, just the Daytona as a model, that it's a lot more unisex than a 40-day date.
Yeah. It's easier. It slips by, people's minds. The other one does look a little bit out there, but it's okay. Anyway, I continue the game.
JL says, Professor JL says, for you, 36 millimeter platinum day dates, Roman numerals was 96 USD. I think he's talking about the secondary market.
Yeah, secondary. Yeah.
We're not interested in the secondary, unfortunately, JL, in general when it comes to these things, but especially not with this purchase.
Yeah. And no, I'll see. It's a good point, Ozzy. It's for me, it's a one and done. I just I'll wait and see what she says, because she will deliver, but I want to see what's her opinion. Of course, if I tell her I want that, she will deliver that.
Right.
But I'm interested to find out what's the truth of all this, if there is such a thing as the truth.
Yeah, but
I agree
there's a
with
big
you.
difference between supply and difficulty. I just want to know supply because that affects my ability more than necessarily difficulty, I think.
JL, are you sure? 96,000 US dollars for a 36.
No, it's not true. I asked. I know about the day date from my authorized dealer in dollars. I'll quote you. Without the baguettes, it's at $64,000.
Yeah, I mean it's not true.
But he's perhaps saying diamond baguette bezel, which
maybe
so it's
not
full gem set
it's
basically.
Impossible.
Diamond baguette bezel.
Pull up his comment again. Sorry, I think that's what he's saying.
I don't think there's a diamond baguette bezel for that model. Rolex has baguette cuts, Sapphire, Ruby, whatever else on so many other models, but not on this one necessarily.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I think JL, I mean, I trust you have your information in whatever in whatever context you have it. I trust your word, but on the other hand, it's also not true. I'm not trying to say you are twisting something. Please don't take me wrong, but it's unrealistic, because I know for a fact that these things should be somewhere around $60,000 to $70,000 and not much more. Even with the diamond bezel, the platinum, or diamond dial, can't get to that price at 40.
Well, I definitely saw a platinum Datejust fully diamond encrusted with a Pearl Master bracelet for about 110 MSRP. So it's in the right range potentially, but maybe it wasn't a day date. Maybe it was a Datejust.
Or maybe the dial was fully covered diamonds
Pave.
with the bezel.
Everything is.
The-
Wait a second. I don't even understand what we're talking about at this point. JL, I'm sending the link. Either jump on the panel or let's not get any more confused, because there's no. I don't understand what it is that would make the watch $95,000 at a 36 millimeter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Diamond bezel. Yeah. I don't know. I said the high watermark that I've ever seen for an MSRP Rolex was a platinum day date, Pearl Master bracelet, diamond bezel was about 110.
Mhm.
Wasn't a very pretty watch, but yeah, 110.
Okay.
And I still have a picture of that watch, a wrist roll. Yeah, I don't know who would wear it. The Pearl Master bracelet. My gosh.
JL, send it to my email, please, so we know exactly what you're talking about. So the email address is right here. Again, it's not like I don't believe you, but you have put it in a way that confused me entirely. So what kind of bezel, what kind of diamond bezel, what's on the dial, the photo will clarify everything instantly. So I'm waiting for your email.
Yeah, I mean, Professor. I mean, eventually, I don't know when will they start discounting platinum. I think the gap is as much as it's ever been, like 2-to-1 ratio gold to platinum these days.
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, I don't know. In the old days, they used to say when platinum was above gold, they used to say, "Well, we're charging because platinum is above gold." When it went down, not to the levels we see now, which is around the 900 mark, 1,000 mark, right? That we have a lot of inventory. We bought so much platinum, and it's unfair to price it downwards. That's the gimmicky things that people tell you. There is some truth to it. Then the other thing is that we need to use so many man hours, and that's true. Now, does it reflect the price? It doesn't reflect the price, obviously, because an ounce of platinum is 900 and something, and they're selling it for I don't know what. So you're not buying the platinum for platinum. I mean, unless there is a revolution in the auto industry that uses more platinum, now everybody in the auto industry is using palladium, and that's why palladium is so crazy high. Hey, Thomas.
Thomas, I didn't want to just leave you in the background, but I think I'm gonna close it in about 10 minutes. But
Close
it's
it
nice
down,
to have
yeah,
you.
sure. I just had if you don't mind me butting in, I'm sorry, I know you're mid-flow, but I just had a little question for you and the professor and Ozzy. I'll read it off here. Which brand highlighted themselves, do you think, the most this year? Grand Seiko with their Kodo Tourbillon, Richard Mille by making the thinnest watch in the world, the Ferrari UR01. Patek with their auction of the Tiffany 5711 and their discontinuation of it and reintroduction of the 5811. Rolex with the Deep Sea Challenge, or the amazing marketing of the Omega Moonswatch. Which was the best marketing, and which generated the most interest in the company, do you think?
I will
Deep questions.
for a second, but I think I'm kind of surprised, Thomas, because the things that you have highlighted are absolutely the opposite, almost diametrical opposite of what I know to be your taste and your direction in watches. So I'm guessing you are intentionally trying to be provocative.
Yeah, just looking out of the sky, you know.
What do you think, Professor? Do you agree with anything that Thomas highlighted, or do you think there's another highlight from the year that thing set apart a particular brand?
I mean, Patek was a huge marketing genius in auctioning their last 5711 and for charity. And Omega was amazing marketing with the Moonswatch, I thought. I thought the thinnest RM watch was a novelty, which might have, I mean, it sells for something like $1.8 million or something ridiculous. I just thought, is there a thing that's highlighted the brand the most? Is a brand that you know of the most this year by what they've done marketing wise this year?
Yeah,
Marketing wise, it has to be Omega
With the Moonswatch.
Swatch. Yeah,
Yeah.
Moonswatch combined with their reasonably good releases. I personally don't like the Moonswatch or any of their releases, but I know what the perception is in general. They've gained a lot of ground.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I would actually say it's the entire Swiss industry. They have masterminded a fantastic marketing approach to promoting their watches, all of them in a different way, but all of them creating enough noise, helped by the demand for watches by everyone, and everyone had a story. I think 2022 was the year of the story, the marketing, the branding of individual watches. As you know, all of them have made a story, with some exceptions, of course, but all of them made something out of their watches. And I think what is interesting is the public that was receptive to these marketing campaigns. I don't think any of them stood above the others because they were rather unique in what they did. You know, Omega, I think I agree with Ozzy, but you know, the other thing that is unseen is the fact that everybody did a price increase several times.
Yeah.
And the whole market went with it. Omega did 6, Rolex did 2, if I'm missing one.
Yeah.
Usually they do one every 2 years. They did 2, and everybody else, you know, went on that bandwagon. And I think they are very smart, the Swiss watch participants, in selling this unique brand that they have, which is watches. That's all.
Interesting.
In in my case, honestly, I think again, I'm not gonna pretend to give an objective answer because we really don't know how much these campaigns have actually succeeded. You know, that there were long lines to get the moon swatch does not necessarily mean that we'll return to Omega as an added value for either the brand or the model. I think it certainly benefited Swatch. Whether it benefited Speedmaster is, I think, an open question. You know, it brings to mind.
I think sorry. I think Speedmasters have gone up 50% in retail. The actual watches themselves, the actual Omega.
I mean, you know, Omega has 6 price increases. Like, I mean, that's like saying that's like the gray marketeers manipulating the market on YouTube. I mean, yes, Speedmaster prices have gone up because Omega has been jacking up the price, not because the market is satisfied by it. I really don't believe the stories they have about how the Speedmaster is selling more than. But anyway, at any rate, it brings to mind the famous phrase that's sometimes attributed to Mao, but I think belongs to some other Chinese revolutionary leader. You know, what do you think about the French Revolution? It's too early to tell. So what do you think about Moon Swatch and its effect about the Moon Watch and the Speedmaster? I think it's way too early to tell. Same thing with the Tiffany dial craze. You know, maybe it will be even crazier and they will be even more collectible, even when it comes to the OPs in the future. Maybe it will face the fate that the Rolex bubble backs have faced, and suddenly people will get interested in other kinds of watches. I don't know.
True.
But for me, I think this year I would rather give a collective award to a lot of the independent brands and how they managed to finally assert themselves, both in terms of market recognition and the way, for example, that Max Büsse's sequential Evo legacy. Sequential Evo won the grand prize of all grand prizes. Recep Recepi won his second GPHG men's watch prize with the Chronomètre Contemporain. Berthoud won the mechanical exception. You know, Voutilainen won the artistic crafts. And in general, the market is no longer, you know, the big 4 plus FP Journe, right? You know, a lot of the high rolling watch collectors are now almost habitually chasing the next thing, looking less at necessarily the brands that have hundreds and hundreds of years of history, but brands that offer unique perspectives, a certain privileging of handcraft and artisanal work, and ultimately experimentation with materials, with how Max Büsse and friends have been reimagining complications, you know, in terms of the perpetual calendar, in terms of the chronograph, with how certain independents have been working, taking finishing titanium to a different level and producing basically a luxury material out of it. I would rather just as a, you know, as a blanket thing, I would say Max Büsse and friends. I would say Laurent Ferrier. I would say Romain Gauthier. I would say LUC Chopard and Ferdinand Berthoud. You know, that to me, that's much more interesting than a lot of what the other brands have been doing. Even Parmigiani Fleurier, I think, made a lot of. And yes, Recep Recepi again. I want to make sure I don't.
Definitely, they're not being overshadowed by the mainstream brands anymore. The independents have shone through now, and really getting the limelight themselves, which is really good, isn't it? Really, really good. I agree.
I would just throw in that I personally really love Tudor.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
on a personal level, like I know that like most people just simply have never heard of Tudor, but the Black Bay Pro is to me
If
the
you
coolest
look at
watch of
their
the year, and
numbers,
the
actually,
Oligos 39 is really cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
Rosie, if you look at their numbers, 4 years ago they were not anywhere in the charts. They didn't exist. So it's amazing what have they done with the brand.
And the funny thing is, again, it's they're. I know Ozzy was somewhat being, ironic as well, in the sense, like, it's in a way they have become so quickly part of the mainstream imaginary. We forget to give the due credit to them, and perhaps it's also because of the shared history and shared present with Rolex, but Tudor made serious strides in the last decade. I mean, in the sense that they have started stepping out. It's not a diffusion line for Rolex anymore. It's not Rolex spare parts anymore. They are spearheading movements to pull together resources through the Kinesi caliber manufacturer. Rolex doesn't pull a lot of resources itself to the GPHG, but Tudor is always very competitive, and they win a lot of awards in the predictable categories again. Certain price segments, the diver watch, so on and so forth. But more importantly, it's just we now take Tudor for granted as a major player. I mean, I know a lot of these discussions are perhaps not that serious and maybe too early, but I think, it's not outrageous to say that Omega was feeling seriously threatened by not Rolex, but Tudor more recently in terms of the market segment they're competing. So we need to give some credit to Tudor for putting themselves on the map as a strong heritage brand, but a brand that is carving its own space in the market as well.
A contender out there, definitely.
For sure. I mean, if you look at like a Pelagos 39 at under 5,000, or a Seamaster Professional for 5,000 something, I think even to a layperson, apart from their allure to the Omega brand, which they'll be more familiar with, they've got really strong competition in that price segment, which Omega seems to think they'll work their way out of just by increasing the price tag.
And of course, here they use the platform of Rolex, and that's the power of Rolex is that, it really helped them to move up immediately in 4 years and capture a segment of the market where Omega, was dying to get, and they will never get, because they'll be kind of stuck. I want to also take the opportunity and ask the question to all of you, which have been the great disappointments?
I will want someone else to chip in on that, but the Chili Badger, thank you so much, man. £2 sterling. Thank you. Love your passion. I get carried away sometimes, but I try my best, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Chili Badger.
Disappointment, I would say the actual build quality of the Moonswatch. Like it is terrible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was sold as a gimmick and as something that you could pick up as a swatch, but with the branding of Omega, and it worked. We saw the queues out the door, and they managed to show us marketing genius. I don't know whether that was the right word to use, but they showed us the marketing with it whereby they drop off 30 per day at each store, and you see a queue of 100 people around the corner. But yeah, there was a lot of duds out there, wasn't there, with the dye coming off the back of the battery compartment and the
Right.
all sorts of things like that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, just straight up, like in your hands, it's just not a very good watch. And the Swatch also have a chrono in a metal case for cheaper, for the same movement. It's just unnecessarily crummy.
This is Corrado didn't ask the price apparently, but this particular day date, which I'm not even sure what metal it is since it's covered all in diamonds, but I'm guessing it's white gold on like turquoise strap and matching oversized Roman numerals. A very interesting piece there with a pavé diamond dial and all diamond encrusted piece. You know, I know that inspires a lot of strong feelings on the part of a lot of people, but I had a similar experience with Omega's recent gem set pieces and Audemars Piguet's. I think these are supposed to be excessive. These are supposed to be maximalist. It's certainly not intended for everyone, and trust that it doesn't try to change the entire image of the brand. But I think as unique pieces in a way, not pièce unique, not single one-of-a-kind things, but like as rare examples, I think they add some flavor. This watch is certainly not for me or anyone I love, to be honest, but
the one that JL sent you, we saw the photo. That looks about right to be a 96 in my opinion, because it's the day date, so it's a little bit higher, but it doesn't have the Pearl Master bracelet, which is the one that I saw, being a date just. So yeah, 96 seems very plausible for this piece.
Because it's baguette dial, diamond bezel, so it does make sense. Does make sense.
The diamond bezel looks gorgeous on that. Really does look nice.
I think I like it more than fluted. I think this is attractive. Yeah.
I know you're not a big fan of the fluted bezel especially on the
on the day. Yeah, I like this. I mean, I would never buy it, but it's attractive.
So what's Thomas? I'll get to mine in a bit. What is your biggest disappointment of the year in terms of the horological sphere?
Biggest disappointment? Oh, that's a hard one. I suppose the fact that the Vacheron 222 hasn't got enough recognition. We aren't talking about it enough. It's one of my favorite releases of the year, and it really is a beautiful watch to behold. And we talked about it when it came out, and then it disappeared, and we're not talking about it now. Nobody's talking about it now. We're back onto AP jumbos, and we're back onto Rolex day dates, and we didn't get enough. This was a beautiful piece of gold with a gorgeous integrated bracelet, and it represented a milestone in Vacheron's history, and
I think Thomas, that whole story starts getting old, but I feel like they have perhaps failed to understand how much demand it would generate, and I don't think they can actually meet the number of orders they have received for the watch at this time. And that's perhaps part of it, because yes, when it came out, a lot of people have gotten excited about it, and some people maybe managed to get in orders because they were already preferred customers of the brand, so on and so
Sure.
forth. Maybe some others got even allocated some, but they they literally started eliminating pieces from their historic lineup to be able to meet at least some of the demand for the 222. So it's I think that's part of it. There
Right.
was a lot of demand, and it's a limited production watch, so it will have to remain a niche kind of interest in either.
Yeah, I suppose if it's limited production, like you say, it's a shame. But it could have, for me, it could have taken off to the sky. It could have really flown like a bird, and we could have seen a lot more of it. And it's a shame they made it limited.
Because again, it's not a limited edition, limited number, but it's a watch they produce in very limited
Yeah.
numbers per
Yeah.
year, right?
Yeah.
So it's but you can see, Thomas, the excitement that new release generated, and the new look and freshness it brought to 222 historically. When you look at the auction results,
Yeah.
every 222 that came onto auction, steel, gold, two-tone, all of them performed really well. So clearly people want to get into it, but a lot of people can't gain access to it, or the lines are too long. There's simply not enough of it to go around.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as disappointments go, I there's so many watches. My mind's turned into a blur of watches this year. I can't really think of a disappointing watch.
Might perhaps help to jog what watches were looked forward to. You can only be disappointed by things that you had anticipated, and so I guess there were a lot of things anticipated from Tudor, whether or not like people thought that a Black Bay would have got its 10th anniversary sort of spiel of some type.
Yeah.
Or if people were anticipating maybe a Tudor Submariner, which I think genuinely the Pelagos 39 really is, but there's still people who want literally the name there.
Yeah.
I think people the Lefty GMT might be one that's worth some retrospective, because I think people have always been looking for something forward to on the GMT line. Everyone expects Coke. We ended up with green, and then this left-hand thing, which is better than, I guess, just not doing anything and just leaving it green. But I'm a little bit cynical about the green GMT, because it just feels confused, and not just because it's left-hand. I like the Pelagos LHD, but I don't like the Sprite.
I'm with you there. Ozzy. Yeah, I love the Pelagos LHD, and but the Sprite I wasn't too turned on by. Again, the green and the black, and it didn't quite fit. There was something that didn't quite fit about it.
Professor, did you share your disappointment for the year?
No, I didn't. I think in terms of brand, I was disappointed with IWC. I'm expecting more from them, and they seem to be stuck. Equally, I have to say something that I've said before. Patek uses marketing very well, but they seem to be contradicting themselves from one quarter to the next, or from one interview of Mr. Stern to the next interview. And the reference is really about the Nautilus line when they discontinued it and then they brought it back with a new name, a new number. The 7 became an 8, and the steel became white gold with some changes here and there. I was disappointed with them because they could have said nothing and kept to it. I think that these are the two, I would say. Rolex, yeah, the Sprite, was it a disappointment? I think if they produce some kind of animal figure on a watch, it will sell. If they put something else on that watch with whatever color, it will sell.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to, again, last few minutes of the show, so I don't want to come up with a holistic assessment of the year's releases. I do want to, since Chili Badger already contributed a super chat, I do want to respond to his last question. I love my Reverso Grand Date. I don't think I would, as my first choice, I wouldn't exchange it with anything. But if I were to add something to the collection, I would love to get the ultra thin and precious metal, especially the one with the chocolate brown dial is very attractive to me, in pink gold. So this is the one. I would love to add that. But I'm very happy with
gorgeous.
it.
I love
My-
that chocolate dial's gorgeous. It's a
Right?
winner with
Right. Yeah, this is the tribute ultra thin. They came out in precious metals. They had it in white gold, white dial, pink gold, white dial in 2011, and then a few years later they came out with this particular edition. Look, my disappointment is Patek. I think just in general, the brands. It's funny, right? Because it's very contradictory in a way, because that's a brand that's been family owned for a while and owned by the same family as well, by the Sterns, who had a very particular vision already in the early decades of the 20th century, and that tradition was carried out so well until the current CEO. Again, I don't know the guy personally, unlike some other people might on this panel. So I don't have such strong personal feelings. But I think he's very confused. Honestly, I think, coming from any other CEO, I would think of something much more sinister. I would not take seriously the contradictions, and I would think there's some sort of play, but I feel he just has a lot of weight in his shoulders because his father was really a very exceptional and unique leader. As far as I completely subscribe to what the professor always says. They're not curing cancer, right? I'm just talking about it in terms of leadership of a watch brand. I think the vision that was laid out in 1989 for Patek's 150th anniversary by Philippe Stern, and how he continued that until he passed it to his son, to me will remain one of the golden eras of Patek Philippe. And I think, again, I'm not a prophet, but I think people will recognize 1989 to 2009 a very important era for collecting Patek Philippe watches decades down the road. But right now, honestly, Professor, those contradictions in his statements, to me, are just signs of genuine confusion. I really don't think he knows what he's doing. For now, it's fine because they cannot help but sell the watches. So even if they get things wrong, like you said in the example of Rolex, it will still sell. It doesn't matter if they change the proportions a little bit and offer it in white gold rather than steel, because steel is selling the white gold retail price anyway. So for the privileged customer, doesn't make a difference. It's just a white metal watch. Hey, this feels a little heavier. This feels a little lighter. It's fine. Give me one. Here's your 80,000. Thomas, thank you so much. I appreciate you, my friend. 179 pounds sterling. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy holidays.
Yeah, I think well said, Lord. I think they lost it, and people, now this fascination with the Salomon dial. The same person who
By
said,
the way, sorry, is that also a special pronunciation for this?
yes,
family?
yes, it's the same pronunciation. So
Let's see you watch with a Salomon dial.
Salomon. It is the same person who told me platinum told me the Salomon.
Solomon, I love that.
And I'll tell you the relationship that has with watches, guys. It's not coincidental. Yes, with Salomon dial. We were at the hotel that is owned by the Parmigiani family. Ozzy might know this. So this is the hotel owned by the family in Lausanne. And it was actually on my honeymoon. We went for a business meeting, and so I took my wife, and I called it a honeymoon. And I had to go for a meeting. It was about precious metals, and that's where the guy said platinum.
Professor, may I ask a question just to enlighten our audience? When you say Parmigiani family, you don't mean the Parmigiani family, but the Sandoz family who owns Parmigiani Fleurier, right? That's the one who has a hotel in Lausanne.
I will be incorrect if I tell you I don't know.
Okay, because I mean,
Either it's
the company has a different CEO now, but Michel Parmigiani and his daughter used to lead the company at some point, but the Sandoz family owns the Parmigiani Fleurier company.
today. Yeah.
They own in Lausanne?
Yes, this was in 2006. So whichever we can see the ownership of Parmigiani, but when I went to the hotel, I knew they have a boutique and they have all the watches, and then I had a meeting with the family as well. Anyway, and that's where we talked about platinum and Salomon dials. He came up with it. He said Salomon dial. Okay, so that's the story. When did they sell it? Yeah, just out of curiosity.
I think they never sold it. It was always because.
I was always okay.
Sandoz is now Novartis. It's big pharma basically, and their artistic heir basically has these hotels.
Okay.
In Zermatt, in Lausanne.
That's it. It's the Beau Rivage. Borivage.
And then he basically gave, it's like the Medici family. They basically gave patronage to Michel Parmigiani and allowed him to establish his own brand and manufacture in 1996.
It's the Beau Rivage. It's the Beau Rivage. Very beautiful hotel, very nice. Exquisite and exclusive, and yeah. So Salomon dial, together with Platinum. I think Patek has to come to grips with reality, but unfortunately, we live in the world of extremes, and people will still go after them. Some of them are very beautiful, no doubt, but the I think the direction is missing, the vision is missing. Uh, it's not what it used to be, in my opinion. And yeah, it's that's all.
You know, also one thing that I want to register as a disappointment in general, and this is not directed to any specific brand or any particular watch release either, but I want to press upon this again. I know in many ways, especially according to my taste, I know this is very subjective, but I think the formula has been mostly figured in mid-century. You know, a lot of the designs I like have pretty much stayed the same from 1940s, 50s, and 60s until now. You know, we can think about anything from Omega Speedmaster to Universal Tri-Compacts or Rolex Submariner, or the way Patek Perpetual Calendar chronograph looks, so on and so forth. So I know one need not invent the wheel, but I'm also especially disappointed that most new releases by watch companies is green dial this, Salomon dial that, and that's where their imagination stops, right?
Tiffany blue.
Whatever is the hype color of the season,
Yeah.
let's focus our new releases on releasing our sports watch with that color, our entry-level watch with that color of dial, and let's you know, make some quick money with that, rather than trying to actually sit and think. But that would hurt their head a little too much, I guess, especially when one imbibes too much liquor in one's grandiose luxury yacht. You know, we don't want them to fall into the sea and get lost and meet a certain kind of fate, of course. So let's not put too much pressure on logical executives. But
is this kind of high level product, imagination, really the forte of many of these companies, as in permanent staff? I imagine that there's just so little going on in total that the number of people who are deeply good at this kind of thing are sort of farmed around as consultants more than, you know, brands having in-house product development.
I can't comment on that universally, but the professor might.
No, they have people. They have, but I think it's more what Lord is saying, and I agree, because we've said it many times, is it's the direction of the company in terms of, you know, the where is the ship going, rather than just the design, and the consistency, and I think when you go out as a CEO and talk about your vision, it needs to be clear, consistent, and kind of optimistic. In the case of Patek, I think it has been inconsistent from the very beginning all the way till today, and also it's unimaginative, and it's, you know, if you look at specifically the interview where he says we don't want to turn this company into a Nautilus-centric company, and then the company is all about the Nautilus line, and then they discontinue it to comply with the statement, right? And then they go back and they say, no, we'll bring it back, but we'll call it 5811. and it'll be precious metal. And we'll produce a chronograph as well. World, a dual time 5990. You say, okay, what's going on here? And then these other pieces that they produce, the Calatrava and what was it?
The Salomon dial world timer.
The world timer with the flyback chronograph and all that. Okay, fine, but I don't think this is visionary. Now, if I'm a watch dealer and I'm trading in these watches, I'll say this is great, fantastic, what a beautiful watch. The what is it? The name, the 5095. Anyway, I get it wrong, but it's the Salomon dial with the flyback. Yes, it's 50,000 pounds, value for money, great. It's a wonderful piece. Now you have two things in one, and it's a new innovation for Patek. Let's go for it. Yes, I would promote it, but in a sense, the brand is not really going anywhere. Now you might say, but how can it go anywhere? Are the others doing something better? And we were very negative on Omega, which for good reason, because Omega keeps on doing the wrong things, copying wrongly everybody else.
Professor, I mean, it's yes, it can, in short term, it can help move product, but 5935 A, that's the model
5935, yeah.
talking about, but that's not a new model. That's just a bloated version of 5930G in a different metal and with a Salomon dial.
Okay.
They had a world time with a flyback chronograph in white gold with a wonderful blue with a nice guillochage at the center.
Oh yes, that's right. We saw it in one of the auctions. Yes.
In a more conservative sizing as well. So it might help them move product at this point in time. I'm not. They can sell basically anything at this point, but I think it just it's indicative of the direction of the brand. And I can say the same thing about a lot of the Omega releases in the lead up to Watches and Wonders earlier this year. That is just, let's release a different color dial of this model, and let's see how much we can ride on this hype. That's as much as I like to believe again in long product cycles. Dial color change doesn't take 3 years. Obviously, it's not like developing a new model and trying to see whether it can be a different complication. Those things they can decide on the fly.
Yeah.
So they are taking the easy way out, and we all know that's not necessarily the best direction, even though maybe the last economic crisis, and we have talked about this, and maybe in a later broadcast we can return to this, economic crises usually teach brands to be less adventurous, go back to what is tried and true, go back to heritage and classic designs, and see how much we can reiterate them. I mean, Jaeger-LeCoultre is a great example of this. Again, a brand that I love, but in the 90s, with Günther Blümlein's leadership especially, and the CEO of Belmont, they revived the Reverso and used it as a canvas for complications that ended up all the way in the Gyro Tourbillon 2 and quadriptych, four-faced, ultra complicated watches, astronomical, imaginative, pushing the boundaries. And then 2008 hit. It took them exactly 3 years to turn the entire Reverso line into a tribute to 1931. And I love the designs. Again, I love those designs, but it shows you how, we we can't experiment too much at this point. We just need to turn to what is iconic and make as many of those in different metals, different dial colors, as many of them as possible, because that's what sells. And that can save the day. And with JLC, I think it took the brand to an upwards trend, but not necessarily consistent. Now they have fallen flat for a few years now.
Yes, they are.
So in long term, I don't know. It might have saved them and helped them ride through the economic crisis. But in 2020s, is JLC where it deserves to be in terms of
No.
watchmaker and movement maker, the so-called watchmaker? I don't think so.
No, you're right. I think, JLC, Girard Perregaux, Ulysse Nardin, they're all these that have a unique position to be, takeoff brands. They have disappointed me consistently, here and there, some releases, but overall, it in a crisis like this, the one we're entering, these brands will have a problem.
Dodger, thank you so much. Last gasp, 10 zloty. By the way, I mean, again, Girard Perregaux and Ulysse Nardin are even worse off at this point. Again, no disrespect to the names and legacies of those brands, but it means something that Kering, the luxury group that owned these brands, sold them. I mean, thankfully, we are not in a position where Richemont is trying to get rid of JLC, so it's not that bad, maybe just yet. But certainly, why shouldn't it be even higher? Guys, Thomas and Ozzy, any last words before we close and thank our viewers?
I was just going to show a picture of a watch that the professor might like, which was
if you share the screen, I can highlight it.
Yeah, I think that's it. That's the one. This reference 103 from Patek Philippe.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
a Salomon dial.
Salomon.
Cinnamon.
Yeah.
No, 130 is a classic. By the way, it's like basically my Lemania is a copy of this, right? It doesn't have, unfortunately, the Salomon dial. Those are built on the Valjoux 13 base, and they are 33 millimeters. And of course, the Lemania from roughly same period is built on the.
Yeah, so that a 1941 model, that one. So it's so I was just going to say to the professor that the fashion for Salomon dials goes a long way back.
Oh yeah, and by the way,
Oh, no, for sure.
speaking of fashion, pink on pink, for example, that's a hot category in terms of vintage Rolex and Patek on auctions. Look out for pink gold vintage watches, vintage Rolex and vintage Patek with Salomon dials. Those always perform outrageously in auctions. Thing you for sharing, Thomas.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I
What
just
about-
Salomon dial. We've got a new phrase now. Salomon.
Platinum watch with Salomon.
Salomon watch with Salomon dial.
Ozzy.
I love it.
Yeah, I was thinking of maybe finishing up though. What was the biggest surprise of the year? I'd say the Deep Sea Challenge. Biggest surprise of the year.
Yeah. I think you're right. Took our breath away, didn't it? Really. It's a 50 millimeter watch with a depth of 11,000 meters.
Full ocean depth.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, again, people came up with all sorts of conspiracy theories because they like approaching it as if, like, it's Dallas Cowboys versus Philly Eagles game. between Omega and Rolex. But obviously, that was to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the actual deep sea challenge that James Cameron undertook, it's basically almost a one-to-one replication of the watch that was strapped on the Challenger for that mission, except maybe modified a little bit and made a little more technically humble for serial production. And I think it is a significant piece, but I look at it in the same way I look at like the Rainbow Daytona, right? It's kind of cool. It's certainly not for me, and it does highlight something about Rolex's legacy and expertise in a very particular and pointed way, and that's the tool watch legacy. Whereas the Rainbow Daytona is, for example, the gem selection and gem setting expertise and the ability to produce something on the other end of the spectrum compared to the tool watch, which is a jewelry piece. So
Yeah.
I like those as a surprise for sure. All right. I think we are ready to close. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I need to go.
You need to get some food.
I think so. So thank you, everyone, for your presence and support. Thank you, Dodger, Thomas, the Chili Badger, and I don't want to forget anyone. For JL and also Phoenician Cedar for your generous super chats, and of course my panelists, El Famoso Profesor, Aussie Expat, and Thomas, for putting their time into the channel. I appreciate that as always. Thank you for your company. Thank you for your conversation, and I will see you next time. Take care, guys.
Take care, everyone.